Where's the ATM card? Let me handle it, Donald said to me as I battled cancer and endured a hospital stay. His triumphant smirk hinted at sinister intentions now that he possessed the ATM card. Just so you know, there's $500,000 in there. Handle it well, I informed him, trusting him not just as my husband but also as a part of my carefully laid plan. I disclosed the ATM card's location, aware of the risks but determined to turn the tables. When I returned home hoping to retrieve some belongings, I found a divorce application on the table, confirming my suspicions. The ATM card was gone, the operation successful. To anyone else, it might have seemed like a hopeless situation, but for me, it was just the beginning of my revenge. I'm Emily, a housewife in my 40s. Initially, Donald and I had a problem-free marriage, but it all soared due to Donald's true nature. A deception that started 2 months into our marriage. He masqueraded as a kind, caring husband but revealed a belief that a wife must always prioritize her husband, underpinning his terrible personality. Donald constantly subjected me to harsh words, believing a wife should be subordinate. You should always listen to what your husband says, was his mantra. Failure to fulfill his whims would prompt cruel remarks like, aren't you capable of listening to your husband? You're a failure as a wife. His demands extended to household chores, insisting on washing his clothes separately and having his room cleaned first, no matter how unreasonable. Even meals were subject to his unpredictable moods. A wife's job is to serve what her husband wants to eat, he'd say, rejecting even his favorite dishes if they didn't suit his fancy. It was unreasonable, yes. I am Donald's wife, but that doesn't make me omniscient or capable of reading his mind. If he didn't want to eat something because he wasn't in the mood, he could have simply told me beforehand what he wanted. But Donald never did that, making it increasingly difficult to cater to his whims. I was honestly fed up with his childlike tantrums. It became unbearable. Yet I knew I couldn't ignore his demands completely because each mistake I made worsened the atmosphere at home and further deteriorated our relationship. Living under such forced conditions was taking its toll. While doing household chores, I lost consciousness, collapsing with a loud noise that alerted a concerned neighbor. They contacted the building manager, who found me and called an ambulance. Taken to the hospital and regaining consciousness, I was immediately admitted for tests. My wishful thinking, hoping they wouldn't find anything wrong, was shattered when I was diagnosed with cancer. Whether it was caused by stress or not, I experienced severe dizziness that left me unable to stand. A nurse had to support me as I sat down suddenly. The doctor advised me to contact family members. I tried reaching out to my parents' home, but my mother had passed away a few years ago, and my father needed care, living with my brother and his wife 3 hours away by plane. It was impossible for them to come quickly. I called Donald, but only reached his voicemail. Leaving a message, I realized he had turned off notifications for messages from me, likely meaning he wouldn't notice it promptly. I could have gone to retrieve my belongings myself, but the doctor advised against it, so I reluctantly gave up on that idea. Hours later, Donald finally contacted me with a brief message. I'll come to the hospital tomorrow. Wait for me. His message lacked any concern for my condition, leaving me uncertain if he would even bring my necessities. His indifference felt like a heavy burden. Earlier, I had explicitly asked Donald to bring my belongings that day. I urgently needed a change of clothes and toiletries left at home. Despite my repeated messages, there was no response. After hours of distress, Donald finally read my messages and bluntly replied, "Shut up and be quiet." Considering my urgent need due to being hospitalized for cancer, his response was shockingly disappointing. Honestly, I hadn't expected much from Donald to begin with. True to form, he didn't show up at the hospital that day. I tried to be realistic, but a part of me couldn't let go of hope, making my first day in the hospital even more difficult. The nurses sympathized with me, which only added to my emotional pain. The next day around noon, just as promised, Donald showed up. Casually, he remarked, "You look healthier than I thought. I expected you to be more frail." His comment infuriated me. "Just put down the bags and leave," I said angrily. Tilting his head, Donald responded, "What bags?" My frustration boiled over. Wasn't he supposed to bring my things? Unable to contain my anger, I glared at him. "What's that look for?" he snapped back, clearly annoyed. His unreasonable behavior pushed me to my limit, but I tried to stay calm. "Then why are you here if you didn't bring my things?" "There's no point." "I had another errand," Donald replied in a confused tone to my angry question. "Another errand? What is it? I pressed impatiently, exhausted from anxiety and sleep deprivation. Donald hesitated, as if debating whether to say something. If you have something to say it now, I urged him. Finally, with a laugh, Donald revealed his true intention. Where's the ATM card? Let me manage it. Trust me. His request suddenly made sense. He had come to take control of the ATM card, aiming to seize our savings for his own use. His self-centeredness, even in this situation, left me sighing deeply. Yet Donald appeared unfazed, smiling as if nothing else mattered. Unable to tolerate his behavior any longer, I decided to act. There's $500,000. Please take care of it, I told him firmly. Donald's reaction was a mix of surprise and delight. To provide context, both Donald and I had been ordinary office workers before marriage, never earning a fortune. So where did this wealth come from? The answer: stocks. I had started investing after becoming the housewife following a friend's suggestion. While managing household responsibilities, I recently made a significant profit in the stock market. Initially intending to keep this $500,000 secret, fearing Donald's selfish actions if he knew about it, my desire for revenge drove me to reveal its existence. Donald's reaction to the unexpectedly large amount confirmed my suspicions. Smiling gently at him, I said, "The ATM card is in the third drawer of the shelf. You'll manage it, right?" Donald seemed dumbstruck but quickly regained his composure. "Understood," he replied energetically. It appeared he had fallen perfectly into the trap. "I'll leave the rest to you," I said as he briskly left the room. Unaware of the obvious trap, Donald seemed convinced everything was going according to his plan. However, withdrawing such a large sum wouldn't be easy. Fortunately, it was a holiday, and the bank's counters were closed. Donald, occupied with work the next day, wouldn't likely withdraw the money until the evening, giving me enough time to execute my revenge plan after discussing it with my doctor. I was granted permission to leave the hospital briefly, and tomorrow my revenge would unfold. Unable to wait until then, I decided to return home to retrieve my belongings. This was merely a pretext. My real goal lay elsewhere. Despite missing home dearly even for just a day, I knew Donald would be at work, leaving the house empty. Upon entering, I spotted two papers on the living room table, a divorce application and a hastily written letter. "Sorry for the rush, but let's get divorced. Please write and submit the divorce application," the letter read. With caution, I checked the shelf and confirmed my suspicion. The ATM card was gone. Donald had taken it. Ordinarily, one might feel dismayed at such a significant sum being stolen, but I couldn't help but smile. "Operation successful" slipped out of my lips. If Donald had been present, he would have been furious, wondering what I meant. First, I filled out the divorce application. Then, I gathered the essentials needed for my hospital stay and left the house we had shared for so many years. Of course, I submitted the divorce application on my way out, severing all ties with him. Back at the hospital, I prepared for the challenges ahead, discussing various matters with my doctor. Later, while relaxing in my hospital room, I noticed several missed calls on my phone, all from Donald. He had also sent messages asking how to withdraw the money or something similar. Not wanting to disturb my roommate, I moved to the common area where phone calls were allowed and returned Emily's call. "Finally, I can't withdraw the money. Please tell me how to do it." Donald's voice sounded more frantic than I had imagined. Clearly, he needed the $500,000 immediately for some urgent reason, but I felt no obligation to help him. "If you can't withdraw it, just give up," I replied coldly, my distress evident in my tone. "Don't be so harsh. We were husband and wife after all. Maybe we should help each other out," Donald pleaded. "What nonsense about being husband and wife about helping each other," I retorted sharply. Donald's actions betrayed nothing noble. He was driven purely by greed. There was no way I would entertain Donald's appeal to sentiment. "Are you having trouble withdrawing the money?" I asked, trying to maintain some semblance of detachment. "Yes, I urgently need the $500,000. Please help me." Donald's voice trembled with desperation. It was the weakest I had ever heard him. The thought of Donald being so cornered almost made me laugh, but I decided to confront him with the harsh reality. "The method is correct, but the ATM card you have now won't work anymore," I stated bluntly. Donald's voice rose in disbelief. "What do you mean? Normally, an ATM card should work." "It's true, an ATM card should work, but the one you have is now useless," I informed him firmly. "Why?" Because I filed a theft report earlier today. That ATM card is just a piece of paper now, useless to you, I declared calmly. Silence followed on Donald's end, likely shock settling in. Earlier that day, I had stopped by the bank and reported the card stolen. Donald had taken my ATM card without permission, intending to claim the $500,000 I had earned for himself. His actions were clear theft, and filing a report was the right course of action. The ATM card he had could no longer access the funds. Moreover, our marriage was over, removing any claim he might have had as a spouse. How does it feel to be tricked by the woman you looked down upon? I couldn't help but add with a hint of satisfaction. I don't know what you wanted the $500,000 for, but I'm not foolish enough to hand over such an amount under these circumstances, I continued firmly, exhausted by his pleas. I need the $500,000 right now. Please, I'll do anything. Just give me the money, Donald pleaded desperately. His urgency was palpable, but I couldn't fathom why he suddenly needed such a large sum. Why do you suddenly need $500,000? What have you done? I asked, the ominous silence hanging heavy as I awaited his response. Donald began to explain. 2 days ago, upon learning about the $500,000, he impulsively quit his job, expecting a windfall. He spent a large portion on gambling, accumulating a debt of $300,000. Now, lenders were demanding repayment within a week, or his future was uncertain. Donald believed he could resolve everything with the ATM card linked to the $500,000. He continued living lavishly, assuming the funds were his. However, when he attempted to withdraw the money that evening, he discovered the card was useless. Now, without the $500,000, my future is uncertain, Donald admitted, his desperation evident. He had abandoned the divorce papers and shamelessly contacted me for help. I don't know what will happen if this continues. Donald's voice trembled with panic, and it seemed there was no falsehood in his story. His reckless actions elicited a deep sigh from me. Donald had done the unthinkable. Seduced by the allure of a large sum of money, he had recklessly spent $300,000 in just a few days. The old me, who had once tolerated his terrible behavior and modestly lived with Donald, might have extended a helping hand. But now I was a different person. There was no love left for Donald, and no matter how much he begged, I felt no pity, only a faint amusement that he thought I would care. Still, Donald hadn't given up. Please help me, you're the only one I have left, he pleaded desperately. His appeals grated on my nerves. I wanted to rid myself of this nuisance and focus on my treatment. This was a situation of Donald's own making. If he had shown concern for me as a husband and brought my things on the day I asked, I might have considered sharing some of the $500,000 with him, but he had chosen otherwise. I'm sorry, but I have no intention of giving you the $500,000 or helping you. It's your own responsibility, I replied firmly, my tone unyielding and harsh. After all this time of not behaving like a husband, it's cowardly to ask for help now just because we're technically still married. Don't be so cruel. We were married, after all. Our long relationship doesn't just disappear with a divorce paper. Donald tried to appeal to her past. What relationship? I retorted sharply. You've only leaned on me. You're making excuses to manipulate the situation in your favor. I refuse to waste another minute on him. I will not give you the $500,000, no matter what you say. Donald's desperation escalated. Please, Emily, I'm begging you. You're the only one I can turn to. If you abandon me, I don't know what will happen to me. Donald's tone implied blame directed at me for his predicament. But it was Donald's reckless spending that had brought him to this point. If only he hadn't splurged so carelessly, he wouldn't be facing such a dire future. If he hadn't cut me off thinking he had access to money, none of this would have happened. Stop making excuses. You're facing the consequences of your own actions. Handle it yourself, I told him firmly before ending the call. Ignoring several subsequent calls from Donald, I blocked his contact to ensure no further communication. With the divorce papers filed and submitted, Donald and I were officially strangers. Embracing my newfound freedom, I focused on battling cancer, which after a long struggle, I finally overcame. Upon discharge from the hospital, I learned from a friend that Donald's whereabouts had become unknown. Desperate after losing contact with me, he had tried to borrow money from his in-laws and friends. However, his urgent request for $300,000 raised suspicions, and no one lent him a penny. Donald's fate remained a mystery to me, but it was clear he was enduring more suffering than he could have imagined. A sense of deep satisfaction washed over me. Post-cancer, I moved out of the house I had shared with Donald, found a new home, and began working from home, relishing my independence. Thankfully, my finances were secure. Occasionally asked by friends if I would find new love, memories of my tumultuous life with Donald discouraged any thoughts of remarriage. I preferred the freedom of living alone.
The call came on the night of my biggest triumph. Isn't that how karma works? Just when you think you've finally proven everyone wrong, life throws you a curveball that makes you question everything. I'm Ren, and I was standing in my first solo exhibition at the Azure Gallery, champagne in hand, surrounded by my artwork and the gentle murmur of appreciation from Manhattan's elite art crowd. My best friend Sasha squeezed my arm, pointing out yet another red dot appearing beside one of my paintings. "That's the 8th one tonight," she squealed. God, your dad would eat his words if he could see this. I forced a smile, but the mention of my father still stung, even after 5 years. "Let's not go there tonight, Sash." Corey, my partner and the gallery owner, approached with a broad smile. "The critics are loving it, babe. That piece about urban isolation, they're calling it a masterpiece." I should have been ecstatic. This was everything I'd worked for since walking away from my father's empire. Tony Lawson, CEO of Lawson Industries, hadn't spoken to me since the day I told him I was choosing art school over business school. "You're throwing away your future," he'd said, his voice cold as steel. "Don't expect any support from me." My phone buzzed in my clutch. Unknown number. I usually ignored these, but something made me step away from the crowd and answer. "Is this Ren Lawson?" A woman's voice, professional but gentle. "Yes, speaking." "This is Dr. Wells from Mount Sinai Hospital. I'm your father's physician. I know this is unexpected, but your father has been diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. He needs a bone marrow transplant, and we've tested all immediate family members. You're his only viable match." The champagne glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the polished concrete floor. Several guests turned to stare, but I barely noticed. "Ren?" Sasha was at my side instantly, her hand on my shoulder. "What's wrong?" I held up a finger, trying to focus on Dr. Wells's voice as she explained the urgency of the situation. "How long does he have?" I managed to ask. "Without the transplant? Maybe 3 months. With it, his chances of recovery are good. I know there's history between you two. Your mother mentioned the estrangement." Mom. Of course she'd been trying to reach me. I'd been screening her calls, too focused on the exhibition. "I'll need time to think about it," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Of course. But please don't take too long. Here's my direct number." After hanging up, I turned to find both Sasha and Corey watching me with concern. "My father's dying," I said flatly. "And apparently, I'm the only one who can save him." Sasha's eyes widened. "Holy shit." Corey pulled me into a hug, but I remained stiff. "What are you thinking?" he asked softly. I looked around the gallery, at my artwork displayed proudly on the pristine walls. Each piece represented a middle finger to my father's dismissal of my choices. The red dots beside them proved I wasn't the failure he'd predicted. "I'm thinking about karma," I said, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "The daughter he disowned is his only hope." "Ren," Sasha started, but I cut her off. "No, this is perfect, actually." A plan was forming in my mind, something deliciously vindictive yet justified. He needs me now. After all these years of acting like I don't exist, he needs me. "Whatever you're thinking, slow down," Corey warned. "This isn't just about revenge. It's literally life and death." I walked to my centerpiece, a massive canvas depicting a man in a suit, his face obscured by shadow, standing alone in an empty boardroom. I'd painted it thinking of my father, though I'd never admitted that to anyone. "You know what the worst part was?" I said, staring at the painting. "He never even looked at my work. Not once. He dismissed my entire career without ever seeing what I could do." My phone buzzed again. Mom this time. I declined the call. "So what are you going to do?" Sasha asked quietly. I turned back to them, my mind made up. "I'm going to save his life, but first, he's going to have to swallow his pride and acknowledge everything he said I couldn't do." "Be careful," Corey said, pulling me close. Revenge has a way of burning both ends. I leaned into him, watching as another red dot was placed beside one of my paintings. Sometimes, I whispered, karma needs a little help. The memory of my last confrontation with my father played in my mind as I sat in Dr. Wells's sterile office the next morning. 5 years ago, I'd stood in his mahogany-lined study, portfolio in hand, trying one last time to make him understand. Just look at them, I'd begged, spreading my sketches across his desk. I'm good at this, Dad. Really good. He hadn't even glanced at them. Being good at drawing pretty pictures won't secure your future, Ren. The company needs you. The company needs an heir, I'd corrected him. It doesn't need me specifically. Don't be dramatic, he'd said, shuffling my artwork aside to reach for some contracts. This rebellious phase needs to end. I'd gathered my drawings, hands shaking. This isn't a phase. This is who I am. Then you're no daughter of mine. Dr. Wells's voice pulled me back to the present. The procedure itself is relatively straightforward, she explained, spreading out medical documents. We'll harvest stem cells from your blood through a process called apheresis. Will it hurt? I asked, not sure why I cared. There can be some discomfort, yes. We'll give you injections for 5 days before the collection to increase stem cell production. Common side effects include bone pain, fatigue. My phone buzzed. Sasha, you okay? Want me to come with? Has he asked for me specifically? I interrupted Dr. Wells. She hesitated. Your father is private about his feelings, but your mother... That's a no then. I stood up, pacing the small office. He knows I'm the only match? Yes, we informed him yesterday. And he still hasn't asked for me himself? I laughed bitterly. Typical. Ren, Dr. Wells leaned forward, her expression gentle but serious. I understand there's history here, but time is crucial. Your father's condition is deteriorating rapidly. My phone buzzed again. Mom this time. Please call me, sweetheart. We need to talk. I'll do it, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. But I have conditions. Dr. Wells nodded cautiously. Medical decisions should be not medical conditions. I met her eyes. Personal ones. Before she could respond, a knock at the door interrupted us. My mother burst in, looking exactly as I remembered, but somehow smaller, more fragile. Ren, she breathed, moving to hug me. I stepped back. You should have told me yourself, Mom, not through his doctor. I tried calling, for what, a day, after 5 years of taking his side? I never took sides, she looked hurt. I supported your art. I sent you birthday cards, Christmas gifts, while living in his house, spending his money, watching him erase me from the family photos. My voice cracked. You chose peace over justice, Mom, every single day. Dr. Wells cleared her throat. Should I give you two a moment? No need, I said. I was just leaving. I'll do the transplant, but first, I need to talk to him, face to face. Mom reached for my arm. Honey, he's very weak. Perfect, I pulled away. Then maybe for once he'll actually listen. Outside the hospital, Sasha was waiting with coffee. Thought you might need this, she said, handing me a cup. How'd it go? I'm going to save his life, I said, taking a sip. But first he's going to come to my exhibition. He's going to stand up in front of everyone and admit he was wrong about me. Sasha nearly choked on her coffee. Holy shit, Ren, that's... Justified? I was going to say intense. She studied my face. Are you sure about this? Using his life as leverage? He used my entire future as leverage, I snapped. Told me it was either his way or nothing. Well, now it's my turn to make the rules. And what if he refuses? Then he's not just a bad father, I said, tossing my empty cup in a nearby bin. He's a proud fool who'd rather die than admit he was wrong about his daughter. My phone buzzed yet again. This time it was Corey. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But remember, revenge might feel good now. But can you live with the consequences? I stared at his message for a long moment. Could I live with using my father's illness as a bargaining chip? Could I live with letting him die if he refused? But then I remembered all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, all the family events I'd missed, all the times I'd checked the mail hoping for some sign that he still cared. I need to see him, I told Sasha. Today. She squeezed my hand. Want me to come with? I shook my head. No, this is between me and him. It's time to find out if his pride is really worth dying for. The hospital room was smaller than I expected for someone of my father's status. No mahogany panels here, just sterile white walls and the steady beep of monitors. He lay propped up in bed, still wearing a dress shirt despite the IV in his arm. Some habits die hard, I guess. Ren. His voice was weaker than I remembered, but his eyes were sharp as ever. You came. Not for you. I remained standing by the door. For Mom. And because letting you die would make me as heartless as you. He sighed, adjusting himself in the bed. If you came to throw accusations, I came to make a deal. I moved closer, noting how the illness had hollowed his cheeks. Isn't that the language you understand best? Always so dramatic. He tried to sound dismissive, but a coughing fit ruined the effect. I waited until it passed. Here's my offer. I'll do the transplant. But first you're going to attend my exhibition. He stared at me. That's all? No. I pulled up a chair but didn't sit. You're going to stand up in front of everyone. The critics, the buyers, your business friends, and publicly acknowledge that you were wrong about me. Wrong about my choices. Wrong about my art. The monitors beeped in the silence that followed. His face flushed with anger, or maybe fever. Absolutely not. Then find another donor. I turned to leave. This is ridiculous, he snapped. You'd let me die over a speech? I spun back. You let me die 5 years ago. My dreams, my identity, everything I was. You killed it all because it didn't fit your precious plan. I was protecting you. You were protecting your ego, the words echoed off the walls. And now your ego is literally killing you. Poetic, isn't it? A nurse poked her head in. Everything okay in here? Fine, we said simultaneously. And for a moment, I saw a flash of our old connection. After she left, Mom slipped in. She must have been waiting outside. I heard shouting, she said, looking between us. Your daughter is attempting blackmail, Dad informed her. Your husband is choosing pride over survival, I countered. Mom sat heavily in the chair I'd ignored. Enough, both of you. Ren, honey, he's sick. This isn't the time for... When is the time, Mom? When he's dead? When there's nothing left to resolve? I pulled out my phone, pulled up the gallery website. Look, Dad, actually look. I held the phone in front of him. He turned away. Fine. I started reading reviews out loud. Lawson's work demonstrates a masterful understanding of light and shadow. Her commentary on modern isolation is haunting and profound. One of the most promising new artists in New York. Stop it, he muttered. The centerpiece alone sold for... I said stop. He knocked the phone from my hand. It clattered across the floor. Mom retrieved it, hands shaking. Tony, please, just look. I don't need to look at pictures to know I was right, he said. Success in art is fleeting. The family business is doing fine without me, I finished. Just like I'm doing fine without it. The difference is, right now, you're not fine at all. His heart monitor picked up speed. Mom noticed too, moving to his side. Ren, maybe we should continue this later. No. I stepped closer to his bed. Here's what's going to happen. You have until tomorrow to decide. Either you swallow your pride and acknowledge my success publicly, or you can explain to your shareholders why you chose death over admitting you were wrong about your daughter. You've become cruel, he whispered. I learned from the best. I headed for the door, then paused. The exhibition's next Friday. Dr. Wells says you're strong enough to attend for an hour. Think about it. Mom followed me into the hallway. Honey, please, there has to be another way. There was another way. For 5 years, there were other ways. He chose none of them. He's still your father. No. I felt tears threatening, but held them back. He made it very clear that he stopped being my father the day I chose my own path. Now he can deal with the consequences of that decision. And what about your consequences? She touched my arm. Can you live with them? I pulled away. I've been living with his consequences for 5 years. It's his turn now. As I walked away, I heard her call after me. He keeps every article about you, every review. He pretends he doesn't care. But he does, Ren. He does. I kept walking. If that was true, he could prove it, in front of everyone. My phone buzzed with a text from Sasha. How'd it go? I typed back. Ball's in his court now. We'll see if his pride is stronger than his will to live. You're stress painting again, Corey observed from the doorway of my studio. Empty coffee cups and paint-splattered newspapers littered the floor around my easel. I'm not stressed, I said, attacking the canvas with angry red strokes. I'm working. It's 3 a.m. He picked his way through the chaos. And that's the 3rd canvas you've started tonight. I stepped back, realizing I'd painted another shadowy businessman. Just like the one from the exhibition. Just like my father. Dr. Wells called, I said, dropping my brush into a jar of murky water. His condition's getting worse. The cancer's aggressive. Corey wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chin resting on my shoulder. Have you heard from him? Radio silence. Mom says he's being stubborn. I leaned back against Corey's chest. Maybe I'm being stubborn too. You think? I pulled away. Don't you start. I'm just saying there might be a middle ground here. He gestured at my paintings. Look at what this is doing to you. Before I could respond, my phone rang. Mom's number. He's agreed, she said without preamble. He'll come to the exhibition. My heart jumped. And the public acknowledgement? A pause. He wants to meet at your studio today. 2 hours later, my father walked into my creative space, leaning on a cane I'd never seen before. Mom hovered nearby like she expected him to collapse any second. Maybe she was right. He looked worse than he had in the hospital. Nice space, he said, looking around at the paint-splattered walls and finished canvases. Thanks. The rent's reasonable since it's not in a mahogany-lined skyscraper. He winced at the jab but continued moving through the studio, stopping at each painting, actually looking at them. Finally. These are... He cleared his throat. These are quite good. I know. I crossed my arms. So, you wanted to meet? He turned to face me. I'll come to your exhibition. I'll even make a speech. But I have conditions, too. You're not really in a position to... Let me finish. He held up a hand. I'll acknowledge your talent, your success, but I won't apologize for trying to protect you from an uncertain future. Protect me? I laughed. You disowned me. Because I was terrified. The outburst seemed to drain him. He sank onto a paint-stained stool. Do you know how many artists actually succeed? How many end up struggling their whole lives? So you decided to guarantee my failure by cutting me off completely? Mom stepped between us. Please, both of you. Stay out of this, Elena. Dad snapped, then immediately softened. Sorry, I need to say this. He pulled something from his jacket pocket, a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges. What's that? I asked. My father's letter to me, when I told him I wanted to study music instead of business. His hands shook slightly. I never showed this to anyone, not even your mother. I took the letter hesitantly. As I read, my breath caught. The words could have been written by my father to me. The same disappointment, the same ultimatums. You wanted to be a musician? He nodded. Piano, I was quite good, but my father... He gestured at the letter. Well, you know how that story ends. You gave in, I said softly. I gave in. Built the company bigger than he ever dreamed. But I always wondered. He looked at my paintings again. You're stronger than I was, braver. The letter trembled in my hands. Why didn't you ever tell me this? Because admitting it meant facing my own cowardice. He stood slowly, unsteady on his feet. I'll come to your exhibition. I'll make the speech. Not because you're forcing me, but because you deserve it. You did what I couldn't. Mom was crying silently. I felt my own eyes burning. Dad! He swayed slightly, and Mom rushed to steady him. Just promise me one thing. Don't do the transplant out of revenge. Do it because, despite everything, we're still family. As they left, I sank to the floor, his father's letter still clutched in my hand. Corey found me there an hour later, surrounded by scattered art supplies and complicated emotions. "You okay?" he asked, sitting beside me. "I wanted this to be simple," I whispered. "Revenge, justice. But it's not simple at all, is it?" He took my hand. "Family never is." My phone buzzed, a text from Sasha. Did he agree? I stared at the message, thinking about fathers and children, about art and fear, about revenge and forgiveness. "Yes," I typed back, "but I'm not sure who won anymore." The pre-transplant tests felt endless. Blood draws, physical exams, psychological evaluations. Through it all, my father's letter to his father stayed in my jacket pocket, its edges softening from constant handling. "You're a good candidate," Dr. Wells said, reviewing my results. "We can schedule the procedure for next week, after your exhibition." "How's he doing?" I asked, rolling down my sleeve after the latest blood draw. "Holding on. Your mother says he's been practicing his speech." I snorted, probably having his PR team write it. "Actually," Mom's voice came from the doorway, "he's been writing it himself, in the hospital garden, every morning." She looked exhausted, the kind of tired that seeps into your bones after too many nights in hospital chairs. "You should go home, get some rest," I told her. "I will. But first..." She pulled out her phone, showed me a photo. My father sat in the hospital garden, legal pad on his lap, pen in hand. He looked small in the morning light, vulnerable in a way I'd never seen him. "He's really trying, Ren." I touched the letter in my pocket. "Yeah, well, maybe he should have tried 5 years ago. Maybe we all should have." She sat beside me. "I found something yesterday, cleaning his home office. Want to see?" She pulled out a manila folder, thick with papers. Inside were printouts of every online article about my art, every review, every gallery mention. Some had his handwritten notes in the margins. Strong composition. Excellent use of light. My daughter did this. "He's been following your career all along," Mom said softly, too proud to admit it, but too invested to look away. I flipped through the articles, dates going back years. "Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me?" Before I could answer, Sasha burst in, waving her phone. "Have you seen this? Someone leaked that you're doing the transplant. It's all over social media." Dr. Wells frowned. "Patient confidentiality." "It's fine," I interrupted, taking Sasha's phone. The post was from a local art blog. "Rising star artist Ren to save father's life through bone marrow donation." "The comments are wild," Sasha said. "People are calling it everything from a publicity stunt to a modern fairy tale." "Great," I handed back her phone. "Now my private family drama is public entertainment." "Isn't that what you wanted?" Mom asked quietly. "Public acknowledgement?" "Not like this." I stood up abruptly. "I need air." I found myself in the same garden where Dad had been writing his speech. Sasha followed, because of course she did. "Talk to me," she said, sitting on a bench. I pulled out the letter, handed it to her. As she read, her eyes widened. "Holy shit, so he gave up his dreams because his father made him." "Yeah." I picked at a loose thread on my sleeve. "Doesn't excuse what he did to me, but it explains it," Sasha suggested. "Maybe, I don't know." I looked at her. "What if I'm making a huge mistake? Using the transplant as leverage?" "Honey, that ship has sailed. The question now is, what are you going to do next?" My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. "Saw the news. Don't worry about it affecting the exhibition. Focus on your art. That's what matters." Another buzz. Corey this time. "Gallery's getting calls about the story. Want me to handle it?" "It's all spinning out of control," I told Sasha. "This was supposed to be about making him face what he did to me. Now it's becoming this whole thing." "Maybe that's not bad," she said. "Maybe it needs to be bigger than revenge." I thought about the articles he'd saved, his notes in the margins, about him sitting in this garden, writing a speech by hand instead of having his PR team do it. "I need to see him," I said suddenly. We found him in his room, asleep with a legal pad on his lap. Mom was right. He looked exhausted. I picked up the pad carefully. The speech was half finished, crossed out and rewritten multiple times, but one line stood out, unmarked by corrections. My daughter taught me that the greatest act of courage isn't succeeding, it's daring to fail on your own terms. He's been working on it all morning, Mom said from behind me. Refuses to let anyone help. I placed the pad back on his lap. His eyes fluttered open. Ren? His voice was rough with sleep. Is everything okay? Yeah, I said, surprising myself by meaning it. I wanted to tell you that whatever you say at the exhibition, make it real. That's all that matters. He nodded slowly. I'm trying. I know. I touched his hand briefly. I'm trying too. Outside his room, Sasha was waiting with a knowing look. Shut up, I said before she could speak. Didn't say anything. She linked her arm through mine. Come on, let's go make some art about all this. God, no, I laughed. I think there's been enough drama already. But later that night, in my studio, I started a new painting. Not of a shadowy businessman this time, but of a man in a garden, writing his truth one painful word at a time. The exhibition space buzzed with anticipation. The story of the estranged artist's daughter saving her father's life had drawn twice the usual crowd, much to Corey's delight and my discomfort. Channel your inner socialite, Sasha advised, adjusting my dress. You've got this. Everyone's staring, I muttered, forcing a smile at another group of whispers and pointed fingers. They're admiring your work, Corey said, appearing with champagne. The new pieces are getting the most attention. He meant the garden painting. I'd finished it just days ago, hanging it in a quiet corner away from the main display. It was more intimate than my usual style, showing my father in his moment of vulnerability. Any word from the hospital? I asked Mom, who was checking her phone for the 100th time. They're on their way. The nurse insisted on accompanying him. She touched my arm. He's weak, Ren. Maybe we should skip the speech. No, I pulled away. That was the deal. Still holding on to that? Sasha raised an eyebrow. After everything? Before I could respond, a reporter approached. Ren, can you comment on the timing of your father's illness and your rising success in the art world? No comment. Corey stepped between us. Please respect the family's privacy. But the public wants to know? The public can look at the art, I snapped. That's what they're here for. More cameras flashed. More whispers. I escaped to the back room, leaning against the wall and closing my eyes. Deep breaths, Sasha said, following me. Want me to cause a distraction? I could spill wine on that pushy reporter. I laughed despite myself. Thanks, but he's here. Mom appeared in the doorway. But Ren, he's not doing well. I pushed past her into the gallery. Dad sat in a wheelchair, a nurse hovering nearby. He looked worse than ever, pale and drawn, but his eyes were alert as they scanned the room. The crowd parted as I approached. Phones came out. Someone started filming. You came, I said softly. I made a promise. His voice was barely audible. Show me? I wheeled him through the gallery, past my older works, the ones he'd never seen. He commented on each one, asking questions about technique and inspiration. His observations were surprisingly astute. You really did follow my career, I said as we reached the garden painting. He stared at it for a long moment. Is that how you see me now? It's how you are. We both are. I knelt beside his wheelchair. Dad, maybe we should skip the speech. You're not well. No. He gripped my hand with surprising strength. I need to do this. Help me up. The nurse protested, but he was already struggling to his feet. Corey quickly brought over a microphone and small platform we'd set up. The gallery fell silent as my father stood, shaking but determined. Cameras raised. Mom grabbed my hand. My daughter, he started, then coughed. The nurse moved forward, but he waved her away. My daughter Ren is an artist. 5 years ago, I told her this was a mistake, that she was throwing her life away. He paused, breathing heavily. I found myself holding my breath, too. I was wrong. His voice grew stronger. I see that now, looking at these walls, at what she's created. But my greatest mistake wasn't doubting her talent. It was letting my fear for her future destroy our present. Tears rolled down Mom's cheeks. Sasha squeezed my shoulder. I stand here today not because of a deal or an ultimatum, but because I'm proud. Proud of the artist she's become. Proud of the woman who had the courage I never did. He turned to face me directly. Proud to call you my daughter, if you'll still have me as your father. The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed, but I barely noticed because Dad was swaying dangerously. I reached him just as his knees buckled. The nurse rushed forward with the wheelchair. I did it, he whispered as we lowered him down. I kept my word. You did great, I said, wiping tears I hadn't realized were falling. Now let's get you back to the hospital. Wait. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket. My father's letter. Keep it. Remember that breaking cycles takes courage. As the nurse wheeled him out, reporters swarmed forward with questions. Corey and Sasha ran interference while Mom followed the wheelchair. I stood alone in the gallery, clutching 2 generations of letters about fathers and children and broken dreams. The revenge I'd planned felt hollow now, replaced by something more complicated, but also more real. My phone buzzed. Dr. Wells. Transplant scheduled for tomorrow morning. Are you ready? I looked at the garden painting, at the man writing his truth. Yes, I typed back. We both are. The transplant room was colder than I expected. Dad lay in one bed while I settled into another, both of us wearing matching hospital gowns that seemed designed to strip away any pretense of dignity. Last chance to back out, Dr. Wells said, though we all knew I wouldn't. Just don't mess up my painting arm, I joked weakly. Dad turned his head toward me. Ren, I need to tell you something before... Save your strength, I interrupted. We have time. No. He struggled to sit up straighter. I need to say this now, in case... Don't you dare. My voice cracked. No deathbed confessions allowed. The nurses bustled around us, inserting IVs, checking monitors. Mom stood in the corner, clutching her purse like a lifeline. She'd aged 10 years in the past week. The exhibition, Dad continued, ignoring my protest. What I said, it wasn't just for show. I've been reading about your work for years, every article, every review. I know. Mom showed me the folder. No, not just the folder. He coughed. I went to your first show, stood in the back. You were so confident, so sure of yourself. Just like you, Mom finished softly. A nurse approached with the first round of medications. This might make you drowsy, she warned. Wait, Dad said. There's more. The day you left, after you stormed out, I looked at your portfolio. My breath caught. What? The sketches you left on my desk. I looked at every single one. They were brilliant. His voice grew fainter as the medication took hold. I was just too proud to admit I was wrong. Why didn't you tell me? But his eyes were already closing. He's been carrying that guilt for 5 years, Mom said, moving to my bedside. Maybe that's punishment enough. Dr. Wells appeared with another syringe. Ready? I nodded, watching the clear liquid enter my IV. The room started to blur around the edges. Mom? I reached for her hand. Will you tell me about Dad, when he played piano? She smiled through tears, stroking my hair like she did when I was small. He was amazing. Used to play late at night when he thought everyone was asleep. Chopin was his favorite. Her voice faded as the drugs pulled me under. I dreamed of music and paint, of letters and gardens, of fathers and daughters trying to break free of inherited fears. When I surfaced, Sasha was there, scrolling through her phone. Welcome back, Sleeping Beauty, she grinned. You'll never guess what's trending. Please tell me they didn't film the transplant. No, but your gallery painting? The one of your dad in the garden? It's gone viral. People are calling it Redemption in Green. Pretentious much? How is he? I tried to sit up, but the room spun. Stable. The doctors are optimistic. She helped me with some water. Corey's been fielding calls from collectors all morning. Apparently, family drama is good for business. Great, My pain is profitable. Hey, she grabbed my hand. Stop that. This stopped being about pain the moment you saw those articles he saved. Admit it. This is about healing now. Before I could argue, Dr. Wells entered with Mom. The preliminary results are good, she announced. The stem cells are doing exactly what we hoped. Can I see him? He's still sedated, but... Mom started. Please. They wheeled my bed into his room. He looked peaceful, younger somehow, without the weight of unspoken words. I found something else, Mom said, pulling out her phone. Listen. She pressed play. Piano music filled the room, Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. The recording was old, slightly scratchy. Dad? She nodded. From college, before he gave it up. He was good, I whispered. The best, she agreed. Just like you with your art. We're not so different, are we? I watched his chest rise and fall. Both trying to live up to impossible expectations. Both breaking free in your own ways, Sasha added. Mom played another recording, this one of a livelier piece. In his bed, Dad's fingers twitched slightly, muscle memory dancing across invisible keys. When he wakes up, I said, I want to paint him playing, not in the garden this time, at a piano. He'd like that, Mom smiled. And maybe... I hesitated. Maybe he could teach me, if he wants to. Sasha wiped away a suspicious moisture from her eyes. Look at you, going from revenge to piano lessons. Character development much? Shut up, I laughed, then winced as the movement pulled at my IV. In the other bed, Dad stirred slightly. His monitors beeped steadily, strong and sure, like a metronome keeping time for a piece we were just learning to play together. Rest, Mom said, seeing my eyes grow heavy again. You both have plenty of time now. As I drifted off, Chopin's notes wrapped around us like a promise of second chances, of new beginnings painted in shades of forgiveness. The piano notes drifted through my childhood home, hesitant but determined. I followed the sound to the living room, where Dad sat at his newly restored baby grand, fingers moving carefully over the keys. You're rushing the middle section, I said, setting my art supplies down. He smiled without stopping. And you're late for your lesson. Gallery meeting ran long. Apparently, Redemption in Green is being featured in Modern Art Quarterly. The music faltered. That's the garden piece? Mm-hmm. I unpacked my sketchbook. Keep playing. I need to catch your hands at the right angle. He returned to the piece, Chopin, always Chopin, while I sketched. The afternoon sun caught the silver in his hair, the slight tremor in his recovered hands. You're staring, he noted. Artist's prerogative. I smudged a shadow with my thumb. Besides, you stared at my work for 5 years without telling me. Fair enough. He hit a wrong note, cursed softly. It's harder than I remembered. Starting over usually is. The front door opened and Mom's voice called out, I brought dinner! Sasha and Corey are here too. Perfect timing, Dad said, closing the piano lid. I need a break. Giving up already? I teased. He gave me a look. Resting. There's a difference. Sasha burst in, carrying takeout bags. Ooh, are we finally getting a piano concert? Not today, Dad and I said simultaneously. Creepy, Sasha stage whispered to Corey, who was setting up plates. They're starting to sink. Mom arranged the food while I cleared away my art supplies. Dad moved to help, but his hands shook slightly. I've got it, I said quietly. I'm not made of glass, Ren. No, but you are recovering from major surgery and a 3-hour piano session. I gestured at the couch. Sit. He sat, but not without grumbling. When did you become the parent? When you decided to nearly die on me. The room fell silent. We didn't talk about that much. The transplant, the fear, the uncertainty. It was still too raw. Speaking of parenting, Corey broke the tension. Show them, babe. I pulled out my phone, opened the email I'd received during the gallery meeting. Remember that arts education initiative I mentioned? They want me to run their youth program, teaching kids from underprivileged backgrounds. Ren, that's wonderful, Mom exclaimed. It's part-time, I continued, watching Dad's reaction. So I can still paint, still do exhibitions, but also give back, you know? Dad nodded slowly, teaching the next generation to be brave. Braver than we were, I agreed. Oh, Sasha jumped up. Show them the other thing. I shot her a look, but she was already pulling the rolled canvas from my art bag. Sasha, they'll love it. Dad leaned forward as she unfurled the painting. It showed him at the piano, but not as he was now. This was young Dad, playing with abandon, joy evident in every brushstroke. How? Mom's voice cracked. How did you know what he looked like then? Found his old college photos, plus. I gestured at my face. Apparently, I looked just like him at that age. Who knew? Dad touched the canvas gently. Is this for your office? I finished. If you want it. Kind of a thank you for the piano lessons. Even though I'm a terrible teacher, especially because you're a terrible teacher. He laughed, then grew serious. I don't deserve this. Maybe not. I sat beside him. But that's not why I painted it. I painted it because I wanted to capture the moment before fear won, before you gave up your dreams. I didn't give them up, he said softly. I just passed them on, in a different form. Sasha pretended to gag. Okay, enough emotional growth. Can we eat before the food gets cold? We gathered around the coffee table, passing containers, sharing stories. Mom insisted on hearing about the youth program. Corey talked about the gallery's expansion plans. Dad complained about his physical therapy while secretly looking pleased at his progress. As the evening wound down, he returned to the piano. This time the notes were stronger, more confident. I picked up my sketchbook again. Still staring, he noted. Still drawing, I countered. We've got a lot of lost time to capture. The music swelled, filling the room with possibilities. Not of what could have been, but of what could still be. Hey, Dad? I'm glad you were wrong, about art being a mistake. His fingers never stopped moving across the keys. I'm glad you were strong enough to prove it. I started a new sketch, this one of the present moment. Family gathered close, music in the air, the future an empty canvas waiting to be filled. Not with revenge or regret, but with second chances, played in perfect time.
The phone vibrated against my desk for the 5th time in 10 minutes. Dad's name flashed across the screen again, and my stomach twisted into that familiar knot. I let it ring, just like the previous 4 calls, knowing exactly what he wanted. My name is Willow, and I've spent the last decade being my family's personal ATM. Just answer it, Jessica said from across our shared office space, not bothering to look up from her computer. He'll keep calling until you do. I sighed and picked up on the 6th ring. Hi, Dad. Finally. Why haven't you been answering? I've been trying to reach you all morning. His voice carried that fake cheerfulness that always preceded a request for money. I'm at work, Dad, like most people at 11 on a Tuesday. Well, this is important. Remember that Mercedes I showed you last weekend? The dealer called. They're willing to drop the price by $5,000. It's a steal, honey. I just need you to co-sign the loan. My chest tightened. Dad, we talked about this. I'm not co-signing for a luxury car. But sweetie, you know how much I need a reliable vehicle. My old Civic is falling apart. Your Civic is only 3 years old, I reminded him. The one I helped you buy, remember? The fake cheerfulness vanished. I don't understand why you're being so difficult about this. After everything I've done for you. Dad, stop! I glanced at Jessica, who was now watching me with concern. I can't keep doing this. The house down payment last year, the boat the year before that. The boat was an investment that you sold 3 months later at a loss. I pinched the bridge of my nose. I'm trying to save for my own future. I can't keep... Your own future? He scoffed. What about family? You make good money at that fancy tech job. What kind of daughter refuses to help her father? I do help. I've always helped. But a Mercedes? That's not help. That's... selfish, he spat. That's what you are. Selfish. Sitting in your nice office, making your nice salary, while your father drives around in a piece of junk. Jessica mouthed, hang up at me. But I couldn't move. Your sister would help if she could, he continued. But she's struggling with her new business. Your mother agrees with me. We've given you everything, and this is how you repay us? given me everything? The words burst out before I could stop them. Dad, I worked 3 jobs through college. I paid my own tuition. Because we taught you responsibility, and now you're throwing it in our faces. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from Mom. Please help your father with this. You know how he gets. I can't do this anymore, I said quietly. I'm sorry, but no. I won't co-sign for the car. Fine. His voice turned cold. Remember this moment, Willow? Remember how you turned your back on family when we needed you? The line went dead. I stared at my phone, hands shaking. You okay? Jessica asked softly. No. I slumped in my chair. He'll tell everyone I abandoned them. Mom will cry. Freya will stop talking to me again. Good, Jessica said firmly. Let them all throw their tantrums. You need to stop setting yourself on fire to keep them warm. My phone buzzed again. A text from Freya. Way to make Dad upset. Again. Thanks a lot. They're already starting, I muttered, showing Jessica the message. Block them all, she suggested. Just for today. Give yourself some peace. I shook my head. They'll show up at my apartment if I do that. They always do. Then let them come. I'll be there with wine and pepper spray. That made me laugh, but it came out sounding more like a sob. I don't understand how they can't see it. The constant demands, the guilt trips, the manipulation. Am I crazy for thinking this isn't normal? You're not crazy, Jessica assured me. They're taking advantage of you because you let them, because you care. But caring shouldn't bankrupt you, emotionally or financially. My phone lit up with another call from Dad. I declined it, feeling simultaneously guilty and relieved. You know what the worst part is? I said, staring at the screen. Part of me still wants to give in. Just to keep the peace. Just to make it all stop. That's exactly why you can't, Jessica replied. Because it won't stop. It never stops with people like your dad. Give him the Mercedes today. He'll want a yacht tomorrow. She was right. I knew she was right. But as my phone continued to buzz with messages from my family, each one dripping with disappointment and accusations, I wondered if standing my ground was worth the cost. I just didn't realize then that the real cost would be measured in secrets, not dollars. 3 days after the Mercedes incident, my sister Freya's Instagram story showed our entire family at Mom and Dad's weekly Sunday dinner. I hadn't received an invitation. My phone rang. It was Barrett, my colleague and mentor. You coming to the team lunch? He asked. Can't. I need to sort through this mail that keeps arriving for my dad. At your apartment? That's weird. Tell me about it. I picked up another envelope with my dad's name on it. This is the 3rd one this week. Open them, Barrett suggested. That's a federal offense. So is using someone else's address to hide from creditors. Before I could respond, my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Freya standing in the hallway, arms crossed. I opened the door. Hey. She brushed past me into the apartment. Why are you doing this to Dad? Doing what? Refusing to buy him a luxury car I can't afford? He's been crying, Willow. Actually crying. She spun to face me. He told us everything. How you've been pulling away from the family. How you told him you never want to see him again. What? I stared at her. That's not what happened at all. I just said no to co-signing a loan. Then why weren't you at dinner yesterday? Because no one told me about it. Freya rolled her eyes. Mom posted in the family group chat. What family group chat? She pulled out her phone, scrolled for a moment, then froze. Oh, you're not in it? Exactly. I walked to my kitchen counter and picked up the stack of mysterious mail. And what about these? Why is Dad having his mail sent to my address? How should I know? But she wouldn't meet my eyes. Freya, what's going on? Nothing's going on. God, you're so paranoid. She started pacing. This is exactly what Dad was talking about. You're always looking for conspiracies, always trying to make him look bad. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. Your mom just posted on Facebook about ungrateful children who forget their roots. Want me to come over? Look at this. I showed Freya the text. This is what they do. They twist everything. Because you hurt them. Dad just wanted your help. With a Mercedes. After I already helped with a house down payment, a boat, your business startup. I'm paying you back for that. Are you? Because I haven't seen a payment in 3 months. She flinched. Business is slow right now, you know that. I do know that, which is why I haven't said anything. But Dad doesn't get the same pass. He has a job, a house, a perfectly good car. The doorbell rang again. This time it was Mom. Oh, good, you're both here, she said, stepping inside. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying. Willow, honey, we need to talk about your father. Mom, please. He's not sleeping. Barely eating. She dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. All because his daughter thinks he's not worth helping. That's not what. I raised you better than this, she continued. Both of you. Family helps family. Period. Then why wasn't I invited to dinner? I challenged. You know how sensitive your father is. He needed time to process your rejection. Another envelope slipped from the stack in my hands, landing face up on the floor. Freya snatched it before I could reach it. Final notice, she read aloud, then went pale. What is it? I asked. She shoved the envelope in her pocket. Nothing, just junk mail. Mom's phone chimed. She checked it and suddenly looked anxious. We should go. Your father needs us. Mom, wait. But they were already heading for the door. As Freya passed me, she whispered, Don't ask about the letters, please. They left me standing there, surrounded by mysterious mail and even more mysterious secrets. My phone rang again. Barrett. Still sorting mail? He asked. Something's wrong, I said. Really wrong. My family's acting stranger than usual, and these letters... Open one. Barrett. Look, either open them or give them back to your dad. But don't become an unwitting accomplice to whatever's going on. I picked up an envelope, turning it over in my hands. What if I don't like what I find? What if your dad's counting on exactly that fear to keep you quiet? After we hung up, I stared at the stack of mail. Each envelope felt like a ticking bomb, ready to explode my already fractured family into even smaller pieces. But as I reached for the first one, my door burst open. Dad stood there, out of breath, eyes wild. Don't, he said. Don't you dare open those letters. Give me the letters, Willow. Dad's voice shook as he stepped into my apartment. I clutched the envelopes tighter. Not until you tell me what's going on. They're my letters. Using someone else's mail is a federal offence. So is using someone else's address to hide from debt collectors. His face darkened. Who told you that? No one had to tell me. I'm not stupid, Dad. I moved the letters behind my back. Why are you having mail sent here? He tried to circle around me, but I backed away. It's complicated business matters. Nothing for you to worry about. Business matters. You're a high school teacher. I have investments. He lunged for the letters, but I dodged. Damn it, Willow, give them to me. Not until you explain. There's nothing to explain. His shout made me jump. I am your father. Those are my letters. Give them to me now. My phone buzzed on the counter. Dad's eyes darted to it. Don't answer that. I reached for it anyway. A text from Barrett. Everything okay? Called the police just in case. They're doing a welfare check. Dad saw the message and paled. You called the cops on me? I didn't. But my friend did because he heard how scared I sounded on the phone earlier. Scared? Of your own father? He laughed, but it sounded hollow. What kind of daughter are you? The kind who's tired of being manipulated. I straightened my spine. Either tell me what's in these letters, or leave. Those are your choices. A knock at the door made us both freeze. Police. We're responding to a welfare check. Dad's expression crumpled. Please, he whispered. Please don't do this to me. For a moment I wavered. He looked so broken, so desperate. But then I remembered all the times he'd used that same look to get his way. I opened the door. 2 officers stood in the hallway. Everything okay here? One asked, eyeing Dad. Yes, Dad said quickly. Just a family discussion. Mom? The officer looked at me. I took a deep breath. My father's been having mail sent to my address without my permission. When I threatened to open it, he burst in and tried to take it by force. That's not... I would never, Dad sputtered. Sir, please step into the hallway. the second officer said. As they led Dad out, my phone rang. It was Freya. "What did you do?" she demanded. "Mom's hysterical." "Did you know about the letters?" A pause. "That's not important." "It is to me. And apparently to Dad, since he just tried to grab them from me." "He what?" Her voice softened. "Are you okay?" "No, Freya, I'm not okay. Our father is clearly in some kind of trouble and everyone's covering for him." "Why?" She was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. "Check the return addresses," she finally said. "But don't tell Dad I told you." I looked at the envelopes. They were from different collection agencies, a law firm, and something called Maritime Investment Solutions. "Freya, what did he do?" "I don't know details, just he made some bad investments, lost money, a lot of money." "Whose money?" Another long pause. "Remember Aunt Claire's inheritance? The one she left for our college funds?" My stomach dropped. "He didn't. He said he could triple it. Make enough for both our educations plus extra." She sounded close to tears. "That's why I never went to college. There was nothing left." The officers came back inside. "Mom, your father's agreed to leave. Do you want to press charges?" I shook my head, still processing Freya's revelation. After they left, I sat on my couch, spreading the letters across my coffee table. My phone kept buzzing. Mom, Dad, unknown numbers. I ignored them all. Barrett called next. "Just checked on you, saw the police leaving, you okay?" "He stole our college fund," I said numbly. "That's why Freya never went to school. That's why I had to work 3 jobs. He lost it all and never told us." "Open the letters, Willow." "I'm scared." "You should be. But not of what's in those letters. Be scared of what happens if you keep letting him hide his secrets." I picked up the first envelope, the one from the law firm. "Barrett." "Yeah." "Will you stay on the phone while I read them?" "Of course." My hands trembled as I tore open the envelope. As I read the first few lines, my breath caught. "Oh God," I whispered. "What is it?" "It's worse than we thought. So much worse." The letter detailed a lawsuit not just about lost investments, but about fraud. And Dad's name wasn't the only one listed as a defendant. Mine was too. "He forged my signature," I told Jessica and Barrett over coffee the next morning. "Multiple times. On investment documents, loan applications, everything." "That's prison time," Jessica said, gripping her mug. "You're pressing charges, right?" Before I could answer, a man in a crisp suit approached our table. "Willow?" I nodded cautiously. "I'm Zane Wallace. We need to talk about your father's debts." "I'm not involved in my father's finances." He placed a folder on the table. "According to these documents, you are. Your signature appears on several high-risk investments dating back 3 years." "Those signatures are forged." "Can you prove that?" "I can," Barrett interjected. "I was her supervisor when some of these were supposedly signed. She was in Singapore with our team on those dates." Zane sat down uninvited. "That's very interesting. Would you be willing to make a statement to that effect?" "Wait," I said. "Before anyone makes statements, I need to understand what's happening. How much money are we talking about?" Zane opened his folder. The initial investment was $450,000. "The inheritance," I whispered, "which was leveraged into loans totaling just over $2 million. Jessica choked on her coffee. $2 million? Most of it went into a supposed luxury boat-flipping scheme. Maritime Investment Solutions promised returns of 300% within 6 months. "The boat," I said. "The one he bought and sold at a loss. That wasn't just one boat, was it?" "It was supposed to be 15 boats. The company took the investment money and vanished." Zane leaned forward. "Your father then took out additional loans to try to recover the losses." My phone buzzed. Freya. "Dad's in the hospital. Mum says come now." "I have to go." I stood up. "My father's in the hospital." "Convenient timing," Zane remarked. "Just remember, Willow, you have 24 hours to decide if you're a victim or an accomplice." At the hospital, Mom paced the waiting room while Freya sat stone-faced in a corner. "What happened?" I asked. "Panic attack," Mom said. "He collapsed at school. The doctors say his blood pressure is dangerously high." "Did they say why?" "Because his ungrateful daughter is threatening to destroy this family," Mom snapped. "Mom!" Freya stood up. "Stop! I saw the letters too. This isn't Willow's fault. You don't understand. I understand he stole my college fund. Freya's voice rose. I understand he forged Willow's signature. I understand he's been lying to all of us. A doctor approached before Mom could respond. Family of Edward? We nodded. His blood pressure's stabilized, but he's asking for Willow. Mom grabbed my arm. Fix this. Whatever he needs, just fix it. Dad looked small in the hospital bed, monitors beeping around him. When he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, he whispered. I was trying to give you girls everything. By stealing from us, I was going to pay it back. The returns were guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed, Dad. You gambled our future and lost. I can fix it. I just need time. And maybe if you don't tell anyone about the signatures. I stepped back. Are you seriously asking me to cover up your fraud? For the family, Willow. Think of your mother, your sister. I am thinking of them. That's why I called Zane Wallace this morning. His heart monitor spiked. You didn't. I did. I'm meeting him tomorrow to sign a statement about the forgeries. They'll arrest me. Maybe. Or maybe you'll finally face consequences for your actions. He grabbed my hand. Please, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. Then tell the truth. To everyone. No more lies. No more manipulation. I can't. I pulled my hand away. Then neither can I. As I turned to leave, he called out, If you do this, you're no longer my daughter. I paused at the door. You stopped being my father the moment you stole my sister's future. In the hallway, I found Freya waiting. I heard everything, she said. I'm sorry. She shook her head. Don't be. I'm coming with you tomorrow to make my own statement. Freya, he has to stop, Willow. One way or another, this has to stop. My phone buzzed with a text from Zane. Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring any evidence you have. It's time to end this. I showed Freya the message. She squared her shoulders and nodded. It's time, she agreed. Behind us, we could hear Mom crying in Dad's room. But for the first time in years, her tears didn't make me want to fix everything. Some things needed to break before they could be rebuilt. Your father emptied your mother's retirement account last month, Zane said, sliding another document across his desk. Used it to pay off some of the smaller debts. Mom, who'd insisted on coming to the meeting, crumpled in her chair. That's impossible. Edward would never. He did, I said quietly. Just like he forged my signature. Just like he stole Freya's college fund. The pattern is clear, Zane continued. When one source of money dried up, he moved to another. Family savings, home equity, retirement accounts, even his students' field trip funds. The school kids, Freya's voice cracked. Dad stole from children? Zane nodded. The school board is launching their own investigation. Mom started sobbing. There must be some mistake. No mistake. Barrett placed a stack of papers on the desk. These are Willow's travel records proving she was out of the country when several documents were supposedly signed. We also have security footage from our office showing Edward accessing Willow's personal files after hours. He had a key to my apartment, I explained. Said he needed it for emergencies. What he needed was access to your personal information, Zane said. Bank statements, tax returns, anything he could use to create convincing forgeries. Mom shook her head. Why didn't he tell me? I could have helped. Because it was never about need, Freya said bitterly. It was about control. The door opened and Jessica rushed in. Sorry I'm late, but you need to see this. She pulled up a Facebook post on her phone. Dad's just announced he's taking a teaching position in Mexico. Says he's leaving tonight. He's running, Zane said, already reaching for his phone. I'll alert the authorities. Wait, Mom straightened up. I know where he'd go first. He keeps an emergency bag in our storage unit. Been paranoid about having one ever since watching some survival show. Mom, I stared at her. Are you actually helping us catch Dad? She wiped her eyes. He stole my retirement, Willow. 30 years of savings. And worse, he used you girls. No more. Zane hung up his phone. Police are on their way to the storage facility. But we should go too. Sometimes family can talk sense better than handcuffs. We found Dad stuffing bags into his car outside the storage unit. He froze when he saw us. "Edward," Mum called out, "it's over." "Nothing's over," he snapped. "I just need time. The investments will pay off, you'll see." "There are no investments," Freya shouted. "It was all a scam and you fell for it. Then instead of admitting it, you kept digging deeper." "I did it for you, for this family." "No," I stepped forward. "You did it for yourself, because you couldn't admit you'd failed." Police sirens wailed in the distance. "Please," he begged, "just let me go. I'll send money back when I can." "Like you've been sending Freya's loan payments?" I asked. "Or replacing Mum's retirement?" His face hardened. "You did this. You turned them against me." "You did that yourself," Mum said. "Every lie, every theft, every manipulation, that was all you." The police cars pulled up, lights flashing. "Edward Boyd," an officer called out. "Step away from the vehicle." Dad looked at each of us in turn. Mom, Freya, me. His face crumpled. "I just wanted to be the father you deserved," he whispered. "Then be one now," I said. "Face what you've done. Take responsibility." As the officers approached, Dad's shoulders sagged. He held out his wrists. "I'm sorry," he said as they cuffed him. "I'm so sorry." We watched them lead him away. Mom gripped my hand on one side, Freya's on the other. "What happens now?" Freya asked. "Now," Zane said. "We start untangling his mess. It won't be easy, but with your statements and evidence, we can protect you from his debts. Prove fraud. And Dad? He'll face charges. But cooperation goes a long way with judges." Mom squared her shoulders. "Then we'll cooperate. All of us. No more secrets." Later at my apartment, Freya found an old photo album. Dad at my graduation, beaming with pride. Dad teaching her to ride a bike. Dad building our treehouse. Were any of those moments real? She wondered. "They were," I said. "And that's what makes this so hard. He was a good father once, before the lies consumed him. Before he decided looking successful was more important than being honest," Mom added. My phone buzzed. A text from the county jail. Dad requesting a visit. "Are you going to go?" Freya asked. I showed them my response. "Yes. But this time we talk about the truth. Because sometimes loving someone means letting them face the consequences of their actions, even if those consequences hurt us too. Especially then." The county jail's visiting room smelled like industrial cleaner and stale coffee. Dad sat across from me in his orange jumpsuit, looking 10 years older than when I'd last seen him 3 days ago. "They're charging me with 37 counts of fraud," he said without preamble. "I know. Zane showed me the indictment. Your mother won't take my calls. Can you blame her? You stole her entire retirement fund." He flinched. "I was going to replace it. Double it even." "With what money, Dad? The fake boat business? The pyramid schemes?" "They weren't pyramid schemes." He slammed his hand on the table, making the guard look over. Lowering his voice, he continued. "They were legitimate investment opportunities." "Then why forge my signature? Why not just invest your own money?" "Because," he deflated, "because I didn't have any. I hadn't had any for years." What happened? It started small, borrowing from one account to cover another, taking risks to make up losses. Then the housing market crashed in '08, and suddenly the investment properties I'd mortgaged were underwater. "So you took Freya's college fund." He nodded miserably. "I convinced myself it was temporary, that I'd make it back before she needed it." "But you didn't." "No, each investment promised bigger returns. Guaranteed," they said. "I just needed more capital." He trailed off. "I used your name because you were successful. Banks trusted you." "They trusted me because I never lied to them." The guard announced 5 minutes remaining. "Dad, I need to know. Was any of it real? The constant demands for money, the guilt trips, the manipulation. Was that all just to cover your tracks?" He stared at his hands. "At first, no. I really did need help. But then, it became easier to ask you than admit how bad things were. Easier to blame you for saying no than face my own failures." "And Mom? Did she know?" Not everything. She knew we had financial troubles, but he swallowed hard. I lied to her too. Told her the retirement account was growing when I was actually draining it. The school kids' field trip money, Dad. Really. Tears spilled down his cheeks. I hit rock bottom. Convinced myself I could replace it before anyone noticed, but they did notice, didn't they? The school board's pressing charges separately. He nodded slowly. Good. They should. I deserve this. The admission hung between us, the first honest thing he'd said in years. Zayn says if you cooperate fully, tell them everything about the investment scams, they might reduce the charges. Will you... He hesitated. Will you visit me again? If I do? That depends. On what? On whether you're really ready to change. No more lies, no more manipulation, just truth even when it's ugly. The guard called time. Dad stood up, then paused. There's something else you should know, something I never told anyone. What? There's a storage unit in Fremont, Unit 247. The key's hidden in my classroom desk, top right drawer. Inside the unit. He took a shaky breath. Inside are records. Every transaction, every loan, every fraud. I kept them all. Why are you telling me this now? Because it's time to stop running. From the truth, from consequences, from myself. He wiped his eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want to finally do one honest thing as your father. As the guard led him away, my phone buzzed. A text from Freya. How'd it go? I stepped outside the jail into the bright sunlight and called her. He confessed, I said, to everything. And there's more. A storage unit with records. Mum's here with me. She wants to know if we should go get them. I heard Mum's voice in the background. Tell her we'll all go together. Pick me up, I said. But first, call Zayn. He needs to see what's in that unit too. An hour later, we stood watching as Zayn and two investigators catalogued boxes of documents. This is everything, Zayn said, flipping through files. Account numbers, contact lists, even instructions for forging signatures. Your father documented his entire criminal enterprise. Why would he keep all this? Freya wondered. Maybe part of him wanted to be caught, Mom said quietly. Wanted it to end. My phone lit up with a message from the jail. Dad again. Did you find the records? I typed back. Yes. Why did you keep them? His response came quickly. Because the truth always comes out eventually. I just needed to be brave enough to face it. I showed the message to Mom and Freya. Do you believe him? Freya asked. I believe he's finally stopped lying, I said. To us and to himself. It's a start, Mom said, squeezing my hand. A painful one, but a start. The courthouse buzzed with tension as Dad's sentencing hearing began. 3 months had passed since he'd revealed the storage unit, and today we'd learn his fate. All rise, the bailiff called out. Mom gripped my hand as the judge entered. Freya sat on my other side, Barrett and Jessica behind us for support. Even some of Dad's former students had shown up, their parents watching with mixed expressions of anger and pity. Before I deliver my sentence, the judge began, would the defendant like to make a statement? Dad stood slowly, papers trembling in his hands. He turned to face the courtroom. I've written and rewritten this statement dozens of times, he said, trying to explain, to justify. But there is no justification. I betrayed everyone in this room, my family, my students, my community. He paused, swallowing hard. To my daughters, Willow and Freya. I stole more than money from you. I stole your trust, your futures, your belief in your father. To my wife, I destroyed the retirement we spent 30 years building. To my students, his voice cracked. I took advantage of your innocence and your parents' faith in me. Some of the parents were crying now. One mother hugged her daughter closer. The prosecution says I did this out of greed, but the truth is worse. I did it out of pride. I couldn't admit I'd failed, that I'd made bad decisions. Each lie bred another lie until lying became easier than truth. Freya squeezed my hand. I don't ask for leniency, Dad continued. I ask only for a chance to make amends. I've provided every record, every contact, helping the authorities track down the investment schemes that took advantage of not just me, but countless others. It doesn't erase what I did, but maybe it can prevent others from making my mistakes. The judge studied him for a long moment. Mr. Boyd, your cooperation has been noted. However, the severity and duration of your crimes cannot be ignored. This court sentences you to 8 years in state prison, with possibility of parole after 5 years. Mom let out a small sob. Additionally, the judge continued, you are ordered to pay restitution to all victims, including the school district and your family members. As the bailiff led Dad away, he caught my eye, mouthed, I'm sorry one last time. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. How do you feel about your father's sentence? One thrust a microphone at me. Leave them alone. Barrett stepped in front of us. They've been through enough. Back at Mom's house, we sat in stunned silence until Zane arrived. The restitution hearing is next week, he said. But I have good news. The information your father provided helped us crack open 3 major investment fraud rings. The recovered funds will help offset some of your losses. What about Mom's retirement? Freya asked. Insurance will cover about 60%. The rest. He hesitated. I'll help, I said. Willow, no, Mom protested. You've done enough. I'm not doing it out of obligation this time. I'm doing it because I want to, because we're family. Real family, not the twisted version Dad created. Me too, Freya added. My business is finally turning a profit. We'll do this together. Jessica cleared her throat from the doorway. Speaking of together, Barrett and I have been talking to some people at work. We've set up a scholarship fund in your names for students affected by financial fraud. The first recipient, Barrett said, is going to be that bright kid from your dad's class, the one who lost his college savings in the field trip scandal. Fresh tears spilled down Mom's cheeks, but this time she was smiling. My phone buzzed. A message from Dad's prison account. Watched the news. Saw what you're doing with the scholarship fund. You're better people than I ever was. No, I typed back. We just learned from your mistakes. Later that night, as we sorted through Dad's old office, we found a photo album we'd never seen before. Pictures of him as a young teacher, idealistic and proud, photos of his students' achievements, their thank you notes, their graduation cards. He was a good man once, Mum said softly, before the lies consumed him. He can be again, Freya replied. In 5 years, maybe. Maybe, I agreed. But first, we heal, we rebuild. We show him what real family looks like. Because sometimes rock bottom isn't the end. Sometimes it's just the place where you finally stop digging and start climbing back toward the light. And this time, we'd climb together. The prison visiting room felt different this time. Warmer somehow, despite the same harsh lighting and institutional walls. The scholarship fund helped its 100th student today, I told Dad, sliding a photo across the table. This is Marcus. He's studying finance, wants to help people avoid investment scams. Dad picked up the photo with weathered hands. He looks determined. He is. Actually quoted your case in his application essay as a warning about pride and desperation. Good. Dad's voice roughened. That's good. Mom's retirement account is almost restored, I continued, between the recovered funds, insurance, and our monthly contributions. You shouldn't have had to do that. No, we shouldn't have. But fixing things together helped us heal. Freya and Mom are closer than ever. We have weekly dinners, real ones, not guilt trip sessions. He nodded slowly. And you? Are you still putting your life on hold for everyone else? Actually, I smiled. I'm starting my own company. Barrett's joining as co-founder. We're developing software to detect financial fraud patterns. Using my mistakes to help others. He shook his head. You always were smarter than me. Not smarter, just more honest, with myself and others. The guard announced visiting hours were ending. Before you go, Dad said, I need to show you something. He pulled out a worn notebook. My therapist suggested I track every lie I've ever told, every person I've hurt. It's not easy reading. Why show me? Because next week is my parole hearing. If they release me, I want to make things right. Real right. Not just promises. But I'll need help staying honest. I studied him, the grey hair, the lines around his eyes, the humble set of his shoulders. So different from the proud, manipulative man who'd once demanded a Mercedes. You've changed, I said. Had to. Lying was killing me, destroying everything I loved. But change isn't a destination, it's a daily choice. And if you're released, I've been offered a job, teaching financial literacy to ex-cons, using my experience to show where pride and desperation can lead. The guard stepped closer. Time's up. Dad stood, then hesitated. There's one more thing. Your sister's wedding next month. What about it? She asked if I'd give her away. If I'm released. He swallowed hard. I told her no. I blinked in surprise. Why? Because she deserves better than a father fresh from prison stealing her spotlight. Told her Barrett should do it. He's been more of a father figure than I ever was. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, I hugged my father. That, I whispered, is what real love looks like. Putting someone else's needs before your pride. Back home, I found Mum and Freya going through wedding plans. How was he? Freya asked. I told them about the notebook, the job offer, the wedding decision. He really said Barrett should give me away, Freya's eyes welled up. Said you deserved better than headlines about your ex-con father. Mum wiped her eyes. That's not the Edward I married. That's not even the Edward who went to prison. That's someone better. My phone buzzed. A message from Zane. Parole board asked for my recommendation. Told them your father's case files are now required reading in fraud prevention training. His mistakes are literally teaching others. Thought you should know. I showed Mom and Freya the message. What do we do if they release him? Freya asked. We take it day by day, Mom said. Trust is earned, not given. Even with family. Especially with family. Speaking of family, I said. Barrett and Jessica are outside. Something about wedding dress shopping. Freya rushed to the window, then stopped. You know what? For the first time in my life, I'm not worried about the cost. Not because we have more money, but because we finally understand what really matters. And what's that? Mom asked. Honesty, support, real love, not the kind that comes with price tags and guilt trips. The doorbell rang. As Freya went to answer it, Mom touched my arm. Your father was right about one thing, she said. You are smarter than him. You learned that love isn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about showing up, being truthful, and sometimes it's about letting people face their consequences so they can become better. Outside, I heard Freya laughing with Jessica about veils and venues, normal sounds, happy sounds, the kind of sounds our family had almost lost to lies and manipulation. But we hadn't lost them. We'd fought for them, earned them back, one honest moment at a time, and that was worth more than all the Mercedes in the world.
I stood in front of the Marshall estate, my fingers trembling as I traced the intricate ironwork of the gates. This was supposed to be where my perfect day would unfold, where I'd finally become Mrs. Cole Harrison. Instead, I was about to lose it all to the woman who had already taken so much from me. My name is Catherine, and this is the story of how I lost my wedding venue, but found myself in the process. Isn't it beautiful? I whispered to Cole as we walked the grounds during our venue tour. The century-old mansion stood proudly against the autumn sky, its marble columns and sweeping staircases exactly as I remembered from my childhood visits with my grandmother. It's nice, Cole replied, distracted by his phone. But are you sure about the cost? My sister Louise mentioned Dash. Louise? I felt my stomach clench. What does Louise have to do with our wedding venue? Before Cole could answer, his phone buzzed. Hold on, it's Mom. He stepped away, leaving me alone with Agnes, the estate's event coordinator. Your grandmother used to bring you here for the garden parties, didn't she? Agnes smiled warmly. I remember you running around these gardens in your little sundress. I nodded, fighting back tears. This place means everything to me. It's where Grandma taught me about love and family traditions. The next day, everything fell apart. "You can't seriously be considering the Marshall estate," Louise announced during Sunday dinner at Cole's parents' house. She waved her newly ringed finger in my face. "Carlos had proposed just last week. That's where I'm having my wedding." I nearly choked on my wine. "What?" "But Cole and I already dash." "Oh, sweetie," my future mother-in-law Patricia interrupted. "Louise has had her heart set on that venue since she was a little girl. Surely you understand." I turned to Cole, expecting support. Instead, he avoided my eyes, suddenly fascinated by his mashed potatoes. "But we've already started the paperwork," I protested. "We picked a date and everything." "Catherine," Louise leaned forward, her perfectly manicured nails drumming against the table. "You know how much this means to me. I'm like a daughter to the Marshalls. I've done charity work with them for years. It just makes sense that I should have my wedding there." "You've known them for 2 years," I muttered. "What was that?" Patricia's voice carried a warning tone. "Nothing." I forced a smile. I need some air." I escaped to the back porch, where Cole finally found me 20 minutes later. "Baby, I know you're upset," he started. "Upset?" "Cole, this is our wedding we're talking about. My grandmother's favorite place. You know what it means to me." He sighed, running his hands through his hair. "Look, you know how Louise gets. And Mom's already talking about helping with the deposits. It would mean a lot to the family if we could just be flexible about this." "Flexible?" I laughed bitterly. Like when I was flexible about Louise taking over our engagement party, or when she insisted on announcing her promotion at our celebration dinner. That's not fair. Louise is just Louise. She likes things a certain way. Inside, I could hear Louise's theatrical laughter, followed by Patricia's doting responses. A familiar scene that had played out countless times before. "Fine," I said quietly. "She can have the venue." Cole's face lit up. "Really? You're the best, babe. I'll go tell them." As he rushed back inside, I pulled out my phone and opened my messages to Nathaniel, my oldest friend. "Remember that crazy idea we talked about?" I typed. "I'm in." His response was immediate. "You sure about this?" I watched through the window as Louise hugged Cole, their mother wiping away happy tears. No one had even noticed I wasn't there. "Absolutely," I replied. "Time to start planning." That night, as I lay in bed scrolling through Louise's endless social media posts about her perfect venue, I felt something shift inside me. Years of being overshadowed, of playing nice, of being flexible, it all crystallized into a single, clear purpose. Let Louise have her precious Marshall estate. Let her plan her dream wedding, obsess over every detail, and bask in the family's adoration. She had no idea what was coming. I smiled in the darkness, already imagining the chaos that would unfold. Because while Louise was busy playing the perfect bride-to-be, I had information she didn't. Information that would turn her dream wedding into a nightmare. For once, I wouldn't be the one bending to accommodate Louise's wishes. This time, karma would do the bending for me. I picked up my phone one last time and texted Agnes. "Can we meet tomorrow? There's something I need to ask you." The pieces were falling into place. And for the first time in years, I felt truly, wickedly alive. "You're surprisingly calm about all this," Louise remarked as we browsed through flower arrangements at her chosen florist. I honestly expected more resistance. I smiled sweetly, channeling 3 years of amateur theater experience. Why wouldn't I be supportive of my future sister-in-law? The florist presented another elaborate centerpiece, and Louise clapped her hands in delight. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with a message from Agnes. "Coffee at 2? Important update." "I need to step out for a bit," I announced. "Wedding errands of my own." Louise barely looked up from the roses. "Oh!" "Found a new venue." "Working on it," I replied, already heading for the door. The small cafe near the Marshall estate had become my secret headquarters of sorts. Agnes was already waiting, her usually cheerful face drawn with concern. "Catherine, I shouldn't be telling you this," she began, glancing around nervously. "But given your history with the estate, the Marshalls are selling." I gripped my coffee cup tighter. "Selling? To whom?" "A developer. They're planning to convert it into a boutique hotel." Construction starts in 3 months. My heart raced. 3 months? But that's exactly when Louise's wedding is scheduled, yes. Agnes nodded grimly. The family hasn't announced it publicly yet. They're waiting until all the paperwork is final. I took a slow sip of coffee, processing this information. And Louise has no idea? None of the clients do. We're supposed to start calling everyone next week to cancel all future events. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. Agnes, I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Thank you for telling me. But please, don't say anything to Louise or her family yet. She raised an eyebrow. Catherine, trust me. Some people need to learn lessons the hard way. Leaving Agnes, I drove straight to Nathaniel's apartment. He opened the door before I could knock, taking one look at my face and saying, "Spill." I told him everything while pacing his living room. When I finished, he whistled low. "So let me get this straight," he said. "Louise stole your venue, but the venue won't even exist by her wedding day, and you're the only one who knows. Karma's a funny thing, isn't it?" He leaned forward, eyes serious. "And what about your wedding? Still want to go through with our plan?" "More than ever." I pulled out my phone, showing him the beach resort I'd been researching. Small ceremony, just us and a few close friends. The weekend before Louise's big day. "And Cole?" I paused. "What about him?" "Catherine." Nathaniel's voice softened. "We've been friends since we were kids. I know you love him, but is he worth all this?" "That's just it." I sank onto his couch. "I'm not sure I do love him anymore. Not after watching him consistently choose his sister's happiness over mine." My phone buzzed again. A message from Florence, Cole's younger sister. "Can we talk?" "Alone." Speaking of allies, I showed Nathaniel the message. "Want to help me recruit another one?" An hour later, I sat across from Florence at a different cafe, watching her stir her tea absently. "I saw what happened with the venue," she said quietly. "It's not right how they treat you. How they've always treated you. But they're your family." "Exactly. Which is why I know better than anyone how Louise operates." She looked up, determination in her eyes. "Whatever you're planning, and don't tell me you're not planning something, I want in." I studied her face carefully. "It could get messy." "Good." Florence's smile was sharp. "It's about time something did." That evening, I attended another wedding planning session at Patricia's house, watching Louise hold court from her usual spot on the expensive sofa. "The Marshall estate is just perfect," she gushed. "I can already picture everything. The ceremony in the garden, cocktails on the terrace, dancing in the ballroom." I caught Florence's eye across the room, and we shared a subtle smile. "What about you, Catherine?" Patricia asked suddenly. "Found a new venue yet?" "Actually, yes," I replied smoothly. "Something small and intimate. It suits us better." "Oh, thank goodness," Louise sighed dramatically. "I was worried you might be upset about the whole thing." I stood up, gathering my things. "Life's too short for upset, Louise. Sometimes things work out exactly as they're meant to." As I left, I sent a quick text to Nathaniel. "Book the resort. It's time." His response came immediately. "Already done. No turning back now." I looked up at the evening sky, feeling lighter than I had in months. Louise could have her perfect wedding plans. She could have her family's adoration and her elaborate dreams. I had something better, the truth. And in exactly 3 months, everyone else would have it too. And then I thought, what if we released Doves at Sunset? Louise's voice carried across Patricia's dining room. Wouldn't that be magical? I stabbed my fork into the overcooked chicken, imagining the doves flying straight into the construction cranes that would soon occupy the estate's grounds. "Absolutely magical," Patricia cooed. "Catherine, dear, you're being awfully quiet tonight." I looked up from my plate, plastering on my best supportive smile. "Just taking it all in. Everything sounds wonderful, Louise." "I know, right?" Louise beamed. "Carlos says I have a natural talent for this." "Speaking of which," she turned to Cole. "Has Catherine shown any interest in helping with the planning? I mean, since she's practically given up on her own wedding." The table fell silent. Cole shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Actually, I set down my fork. We're making progress with our plans." They're just more private. Private? Louise scoffed. Is that code for cheap? Louise, Carlos warned, but she waved him off. I'm just saying, if you need help with the budget dash. Not everyone needs a circus to feel special, Florence cut in, her voice sharp. Patricia gasped. Florence, apologize to your sister. Stepsister, Florence corrected. And I'm not apologizing for telling the truth. I caught Cole watching me, something like uncertainty crossing his face. For a moment, I remembered why I'd fallen for him, those rare glimpses of awareness when he almost stood up to his family. But then Louise started crying, and like a well-rehearsed play, everyone rushed to comfort her. I'm just trying to help, she sobbed. I want everything to be perfect. Why does everyone hate me? Nobody hates you, Princess, Patricia soothed, shooting daggers at Florence and me. My phone buzzed. A message from Agnes. Development plans finalized. Construction starts exactly as scheduled. Excuse me, I stood up. I need some air. Cole followed me onto the patio. Catherine, wait. Don't, I turned to face him. Just don't. She means well, he started, but I cut him off with a laugh. Remember our engagement party? I asked. When Louise announced her promotion during your speech? She was excited dash. Or my birthday dinner last year. When she hijacked the conversation to show everyone her new car. That's just how she is dash. Exactly, Cole. That's how she is. And you. I stepped closer, looking into his eyes. You're the person who lets her be that way. He ran his hands through his hair, his nervous tell. What do you want me to do? She's my sister. And I'm supposed to be your future wife. The sliding door opened, and Patricia stepped out. Cole, honey? Louise needs you. She's quite upset. Of course she was. Cole gave me an apologetic look before heading inside. I waited until the door closed before pulling out my phone. Everything still set for next weekend? I texted Nathaniel. All arranged. You ready? I watched through the window as Cole hugged Louise, the family clustered around them like a protective shield. More than ready. Back inside, Louise had recovered enough to continue her wedding planning monologue. The Marshall estate is just so perfect, she sighed dreamily. Mom, remember when we used to drive past it when I was little? I always said I'd get married there. Florence caught my eye and mouthed, liar. We both knew Louise had never shown interest in the estate until she'd heard about my plans. I just hope they maintain those beautiful gardens, Patricia mused. I heard rumors about the owners wanting to make changes. I took a sip of wine to hide my smile. I'm sure everything will work out exactly as it's meant to. Later that night, as Cole drove us home, he tried again. Baby, I know Louise can be overwhelming. Overwhelming. I stared out the window. Is that what we're calling it? Look, after the wedding dash. After the wedding, what? I turned to him. Things will be different? Louise will suddenly respect boundaries? You'll finally stand up to your family? He gripped the steering wheel tighter. You're being unfair. No, Cole. I'm being clear. For the first time in our relationship, I'm being absolutely clear. We rode the rest of the way in silence. As we pulled into our driveway, my phone lit up with a message from Florence. Just heard Louise talking to Mom. She's planning to announce her pregnancy at your wedding. Whenever that ends up being. I closed my eyes, letting out a long breath. Of course she was. Opening my eyes, I typed back, don't worry. She won't get the chance. Cole was already heading inside, probably assuming I'd follow as I always did, ready to make peace and move on. Not this time. I pulled up my conversation with Nathaniel. Can you move everything up? I don't want to wait another week. His response was immediate. Say when. I looked at our house, at the life I'd tried to build with a man who would never truly be mine. Tomorrow, I typed. Let's end this tomorrow. The morning sun streamed through our bedroom window as I quietly packed my essentials. Cole had already left for work, kissing me goodbye with his usual distracted affection. He had no idea it would be our last kiss. My phone buzzed with a message from Florence. Mom's hosting a pre-wedding brunch for Louise today. Where are you? Not feeling well, I replied. Send my regrets. 3 more messages arrived in quick succession. Florence, You're doing it today, aren't you? Nathaniel, flight booked. 4 p.m. Agnes, demolition crew just did their final walkthrough. It's really happening. I took a deep breath and called the one person who deserved to know the truth. Catherine? Cole's sister picked up immediately. Are you okay? Florence, I need you to listen carefully. I'm leaving. A pause. Today? Yes. And I need you to do something for me. Anything. Don't tell them where I've gone. Just be there when everything falls apart. What about Cole? I zipped up my suitcase. He made his choice a long time ago. He just doesn't know it yet. The doorbell rang. Nathaniel, right on time. I opened the door to find him leaning against his car, looking both concerned and determined. Last chance to back out, he said as he helped with my bags. Not a chance. I handed him an envelope. Can you mail this on your way to the airport? He glanced at the address. The Marshall estate? My resignation letter from Louise's wedding party. Seemed only fair to make it official. As we drove away, my phone lit up with messages from Louise. Where are you? Mom's brunch is starting. Hello? Catherine, this is so inconsiderate. Cole is worried about you. I switched off my phone. You know they'll try to stop you, Nathaniel said as we merged onto the highway. They can try. I twisted my engagement ring, then slipped it off. But they're about to have bigger problems. At the airport, Florence called one last time. Louise is furious, she reported. She's convinced you're trying to steal attention from her special day. I laughed. Tell her not to worry. Her special day will be memorable enough. Catherine. Florence's voice softened. Are you sure about this? Remember when we were kids? How Louise would always take your toys and your parents would say, just let her have it. Yeah, I'm done letting her have it. The airport buzzed with activity as Nathaniel and I made our way to security. Just before I went through, he grabbed my hand. What? I asked. I need to tell you something. He looked nervous suddenly. I've been in love with you since we were 16. My heart skipped. Nathaniel, I know this isn't the right time. And I know you're running away from Cole, not running to me. But he squeezed my hand. I just needed you to know. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again, Cole calling. I declined the call and turned to Nathaniel. You're wrong, I said softly. I'm not just running away. I'm finally running toward something real. His smile lit up his entire face. As we boarded the plane, I turned my phone on one last time. Messages flooded in. Cole, where are you? Everyone's worried. Louise, this is so typical of you, making everything about yourself. Patricia, dear, you're being very childish. Florence, stay strong. I've got your back. And finally, Agnes, construction company just posted the public notice. It's all over social media. I smiled, imagining the chaos unfolding at Patricia's brunch. How long before someone saw the notice? How long before Louise's perfect world started crumbling? Ready? Nathaniel asked as the plane began to taxi. I looked at him, really looked at him. My best friend since childhood, the person who'd always seen me clearly, who'd never asked me to be less so someone else could be more. Actually, I said, there's something I need to tell you too. But before I could continue, my phone lit up with one final message. From Cole. Just saw the news about the Marshall estate. Please tell me you knew about this. I turned off my phone for good and turned to Nathaniel. Yes, I said, answering both Cole's text and Nathaniel's question. I'm ready. The plane took off, carrying us toward the small beach resort where a justice of the peace was waiting. Where a new life was waiting. Behind us, Louise's perfect world was about to implode. And for once, I wouldn't be there to pick up the pieces. Some people might call it revenge. I called it karma. And karma, like a demolition crew, was about to do its work. The ocean breeze ruffled my simple white dress as I stood barefoot in the sand, holding Nathaniel's hands. No elaborate decorations, no doves, no drama, just us, a justice of the peace, and the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone lay silent in my beach bag, but Florence had insisted on keeping one line of communication open through her burner phone. As Nathaniel and I exchanged vows, it buzzed with updates from Ground Zero. Do you, Catherine, take Nathaniel? Buzz, Louise just arrived at the Marshall estate for her final venue walkthrough. You should see her face. I do, I said, squeezing Nathaniel's hands. Do you, Nathaniel, take Catherine? Buzz, OMG. She's screaming at the construction foreman. Mom's trying to call the owners. I do, Nathaniel said, his eyes never leaving mine. Buzz, Cole just showed up. He looks shell-shocked. As we sealed our marriage with a kiss, Florence's messages kept coming rapid fire. Louise is having a complete meltdown. Security had to escort them out. Carlos is trying to calm her down, but she's hysterical. Mom's threatening to sue everyone. I picked up the phone and typed, "How's Cole?" Florence replied instantly, "He keeps asking if anyone's heard from you." Should I tell him? No. He'll figure it out soon enough. Nathaniel wrapped his arms around me from behind, resting his chin on my shoulder to read the messages. You okay? I turned in his arms. You know what? For the first time in years, I really am. Mrs. Nathaniel Chin, he grinned. Has a nice ring to it. Better than Mrs. Cole Harrison ever did. My phone buzzed again, this time with a video. Florence had captured Louise's meltdown in all its glory. She was standing in front of the estate's gates, designer dress covered in dust from the construction site, mascara running down her face as she screamed at a bewildered worker. This is my venue. Do you know who I am? This is my special day. Behind her, Patricia was frantically dialing numbers on her phone while Carlos tried to guide Louise back to their car. Cole stood off to the side, staring at his phone, probably still trying to reach me. Should we watch? Nathaniel asked. I shook my head. Let's dance instead. We swayed to the sound of waves crashing against the shore, but Florence's updates kept coming. Louise found out you knew about the demolition plans. She's out for blood. Mom's calling all the luxury venues in a 100-mile radius. Nothing available. Cole finally connected the dots about your disappearance. He's not taking it well. I switched off the phone and tossed it back in my bag. Enough karma watching for one day. Want to tell me what you're thinking? Nathaniel asked softly. I'm thinking. I looked up at him, at the kindness in his eyes that had always been there. I'm thinking I should have done this years ago. Later that night, in our beachfront suite, I finally turned my phone back on. The messages flooded in. Louise, you knew. You planned this. I'll never forgive you. Patricia, how could you be so selfish? After everything we've done for you. Carlos, this is low, Catherine. Really low. Cole, please call me. We need to talk. And then, one final message from Florence, sent just minutes ago. Louise just announced she's postponing her wedding indefinitely. Says she can't possibly plan another perfect day and time. But here's the real tea, Carlos doesn't look happy about it. At all. I showed the messages to Nathaniel, who was lounging on our balcony with 2 glasses of champagne. Karma's not just a demolition crew, he mused, handing me a glass. It's also a relationship wrecking ball. Should I feel bad? I asked. He considered this. Do you? I thought about years of being overshadowed, of Cole's constant capitulation to his sister's demands, of Louise's endless entitlement. No, I said finally. I really don't. My phone buzzed one last time, Cole calling. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. Catherine? Where are you? On my honeymoon. Silence. Then what? I got married today, Cole. To someone who sees me, who chooses me. But our wedding, we were supposed to. No, I cut him off. You were supposed to be my partner. Instead, you were Louise's brother first, your mother's son second, and my fiancé a distant third. So I made a different choice. Catherine, please dash. Goodbye, Cole. Give my best to Louise. I hear she's having venue troubles. I hung up and turned to Nathaniel, who was watching me with a mix of pride and love. Ready for our first sunset as husband and wife? He asked. I took his hand and stepped onto the balcony, leaving my phone and my old life behind. Ready for everything. 3 days into our honeymoon, Florence's messages became impossible to ignore. Louise is going nuclear. She's telling everyone you sabotaged her wedding. Mom's calling all their society friends, trying to salvage Louise's reputation. Cole's drinking. A lot. Carlos moved out last night. I was lounging by the resort pool when my phone started ringing. Louise's number. Nathaniel looked up from his book, raising an eyebrow. "Time to face the music?" he asked. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Louise." "You vindictive bitch." Her scream was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. "You planned this. You knew about the demolition, and you let me plan everything anyway. Karma's funny that way." "Karma?" She laughed hysterically. "You call this karma? You destroyed my wedding. My reputation. Carlos won't even talk to me." "That sounds awful," I said calmly. "Almost as awful as having someone deliberately steal your wedding venue." Silence. "Then, that's different." "I deserved dash." "You deserved what, Louise? To always get your way? To take whatever you want without consequences?" "I'm telling everyone what you did," she threatened. "No one will ever speak to you again." "Go ahead. Tell them how you demanded my venue, how your brother chose you over his fiancé, how your mother enabled your entitlement. Tell them everything." Cole is devastated. She tried a different approach. "How could you do this to him? The same way he did it to me. One choice at a time." The line went quiet. When Louise spoke again, her voice was different. Smaller. "Carlos says I'm just like Mom. That I never think about anyone but myself. Sounds like Carlos is pretty smart. He says he needs time to think about our relationship." I sat up straighter. "Are you actually asking for my sympathy right now?" I don't understand why everyone's being so mean to me. Goodbye, Louise." I hung up and turned to Nathaniel. "Well, that was dash." My phone rang again. "Cole." "Your turn." Nathaniel squeezed my hand. "Catherine?" Cole's voice was rough. "Please don't hang up." "What do you want?" "To understand. Was any of it real?" "Us." I closed my eyes. It was real until it wasn't. Until I realized I'd always be competing with Louise for your attention. "So you planned this?" "This whole time." "No. The Marshall estate situation was just lucky timing. But once I knew, I made a choice. Just like you did, every time you chose Louise over me." "I loved you," he said quietly. "No, Cole. You loved the idea of me. The woman who would always understand, always step aside, always let Louise shine. But that's not love. That's convenience." "And Nathaniel? How long has that been going on?" I looked at my new husband, who was pretending not to listen while reading his book. "Nathaniel saw me when no one else did. Including you. Florence knew, didn't she? About everything. She knew what it was like to live in Louise's shadow. The difference is, she's stuck with it. I had a choice." Cole's voice cracked. "I would have chosen you. After the wedding dash. After the wedding, nothing would have changed. We both know that." My phone buzzed with another message from Florence. "Carlos just announced he's taking a job in Seattle. Alone." "Look at that," I told Cole. "Seems like Carlos made a choice too. This is going to destroy Louise." "No, it's going to teach her that actions have consequences. Maybe she'll learn from it. Maybe she won't. But it's not my problem anymore." "And us?" he asked. "What are we supposed to do now?" "You? You're going to hang up this phone, go comfort your sister, and continue being exactly who you've always been." "Me? I'm going to enjoy my honeymoon with my husband." "Husband," he repeated hollowly. "You really married him?" "Goodbye, Cole." I ended the call and turned to Nathaniel. "Well, that's done." He set down his book. "How do you feel?" "Like I just put down a weight I didn't even know I was carrying." My phone buzzed one more time. A message from Agnes. "Demolition starts tomorrow. Thought you'd want to know." I showed Nathaniel the message. "Want to order champagne? To celebrate the demolition or the confrontations?" "Both. And to new beginnings." He pulled me close, kissing me softly. "To new beginnings." As we clinked glasses, I couldn't help but smile at the thought of the Marshall estate's imminent transformation. Sometimes the most beautiful things rise from the rubble of what we thought we wanted. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's finally choosing yourself. 1 week after our return from the honeymoon, Florence sent me the video I'd been waiting for. The Marshall Estate's first demolition day, captured in all its glory, including Louise's final meltdown. "You have to watch this," I told Nathaniel, curling up next to him on our apartment couch. The video started with Louise's white Mercedes screeching to a halt outside the estate's gates. She jumped out, still in her yoga outfit, makeup streaked with tears. "Stop. You can't do this," she screamed at the demolition crew. "This is MY venue." The workers ignored her, continuing their preparations as Patricia's car pulled up behind Louise's. "This is gold," Nathaniel whispered, pulling me closer. Florence's steady camera work captured every moment. Louise trying to climb the construction fence, Patricia attempting to reason with the foreman, and finally, Carlos arriving to witness the chaos. "Louise," he called out, "this has to stop." "Carlos." She spun around. Tell them they can't destroy our wedding venue." "There is no wedding venue," he said quietly. "And there might not be a wedding either." The camera zoomed in on Louise's face as the reality of his words hit her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I can't do this anymore. The drama, the entitlement, the constant need to be the center of attention." "But I love you." "No," Carlos shook his head. "You love the idea of a perfect wedding, a perfect life. But none of this is perfect, Louise. It's not even real." Behind them, the first wrecking ball swung into the estate's west wing. Louise's scream of anguish was drowned out by the sound of crumbling marble. The video ended with Louise collapsing into Patricia's arms while Carlos walked away, not looking back. "Wow," Nathaniel said. "Just wow." My phone buzzed. A text from Ruby, my estranged cousin who'd cut ties with the family years ago after her own run-in with Louise's toxic behavior. Saw the news about Louise's wedding disaster. Finally, someone stood up to her. "Dinner soon?" "You should go," Nathaniel encouraged. Ruby was always the smart one, getting out early. Before I could respond, Florence called. "Are you watching the fallout?" she asked without preamble. "Just finished the demolition video." "How's everyone holding up?" "Mom's in damage control mode. She's telling everyone the venue change is a blessing in disguise because now Louise can have an even grander wedding. And Louise hasn't left her room in 3 days. Carlos's stuff is gone, his ring is on the kitchen counter, and he's not returning anyone's calls." "What about Cole?" Florence paused. "He's different. Quiet. I think he's finally seeing our family clearly for the first time." "Better late than never," I said, but without bitterness. "Catherine?" Florence's voice softened. "Thank you." "For what?" "For showing me it's possible to break free. I just accepted a job offer in Chicago." I sat up straighter. "Florence, that's amazing." "Mom's furious, of course. Says I'm abandoning the family when Louise needs us most. But I'm done living in her shadow. Proud of you, Flo." After we hung up, I checked social media. Louise's perfect Instagram facade was crumbling. Her last post, a bitter rant about loyalty and betrayal, had been deleted after Carlos commented, "The only betrayal was believing you'd ever change." "Want to hear something weird?" I asked Nathaniel. "Always. I don't feel guilty. Not even a little bit." He pulled me closer. "Why should you? You didn't cause this. You just stopped preventing the natural consequences of their actions." My phone lit up with another message, from Agnes this time. She'd attached a photo of the demolition site with the caption, "Karma has entered the chat." I showed Nathaniel, and we both laughed. "You know," he said, "we never did have a proper wedding reception." "What did you have in mind?" "Well, Ruby's back in touch. Florence is breaking free. Maybe it's time for a celebration of new beginnings. For everyone who's ever needed to escape Louise's orbit." I considered this. A party for the survivors? Exactly. We could call it. The liberation celebration, I finished, already warming to the idea. I picked up my phone and started a group text with Ruby and Florence. "Party at our place next Saturday. Theme, freedom. Dress code, whatever the hell you want. RSVP if you're ready to start living your best Louise-free life." Their responses were immediate. "Ruby, count me in." "Florence, already picking out my outfit. Nathaniel read the messages over my shoulder. Think Louise will hear about it? Oh, definitely. But for once, I don't care what Louise thinks. He kissed my temple. Now that's what I call character development. Outside our window, the sun was setting on another day in our new life. Somewhere across town, Louise was probably still crying in her room, mourning the loss of her perfect wedding, her perfect fiancé, her perfect control. But here, in our imperfect but honest life, everything was exactly as it should be. The liberation celebration was in full swing when Florence arrived with unexpected news. "Cole's here," she announced, finding me by the punch bowl. "He's outside in the parking lot. Says he needs to talk to you." Nathaniel squeezed my hand. "Want me to handle it?" "No," I smiled, kissing his cheek. "I've got this." Cole stood by his car, looking smaller somehow. The golden boy shine had worn off, replaced by something more human, more real. "Quite a party," he said as I approached. "I can hear the music from here." "Why are you here, Cole?" He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Found this while packing up my place. Thought you should have it." Inside was a photo from our first date, both of us laughing at some forgotten joke, young and hopeful. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he continued. "About choices. About who I became when I was trying to keep everyone else happy. And I'm moving to Seattle." That surprised me. "Seattle?" "Carlos got me a job at his new firm. Said maybe some distance from the family would do me good." "What does Louise think about that?" He laughed humorlessly. "Louise isn't speaking to me. Says I betrayed her by taking Carlos's side." "Did you?" "Take his side. I told her he was right about her. About all of us." He looked up at the party lights streaming from my window. "Sounds like fun in there." "It is. We're celebrating." "What exactly?" "Freedom. Truth. The courage to choose ourselves." He nodded slowly. "I get that now. Too late, but I get it." From inside, I heard Ruby's voice call out, "Catherine, you're missing the toast." "I should go," I said. "Catherine?" Cole's voice stopped me. "I'm sorry. Not just for the wedding venue, but for everything. For every time I made you feel second best." "I know. Are you happy?" "With Nathaniel." I thought about morning coffee conversations that never got interrupted by Louise's drama. About decisions made together, without family interference. About being seen, truly seen, by someone who loved me for exactly who I was. "Yes," I said simply. "I am." "Good. You deserve that." As I turned to leave, he called out one last time. "Hey, Catherine? Thank you." "For what?" "For showing me what courage looks like." Back inside, the party was reaching its peak. Florence was showing everyone her plane ticket to Chicago. Ruby was teaching Nathaniel our old family dance moves. Friends and relatives who'd spent years tiptoeing around Louise's feelings were laughing freely, sharing stories of liberation. "Everything okay?" Nathaniel asked as I rejoined him. "Better than okay," I smiled. "Cole's moving to Seattle." "Running away?" "No, I watched Florence twirl in her freedom dance. I think he's finally running toward something real. Just like the rest of us." Ruby clinked her glass for attention. "A toast. To Catherine and Nathaniel, who showed us that sometimes the best revenge is living well. And to all of us who finally learned to write our own stories. To writing our own stories," everyone cheered. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Louise. "I hope you're happy with yourself. You've ruined everything." I showed it to Nathaniel, who grinned. "Want to respond?" Actually, I turned off my phone and set it aside. I don't need to. My happiness speaks for itself. He pulled me onto the makeshift dance floor as Ruby started playing our song. Around us, people who'd spent years living in Louise's shadow were stepping into their own light. Florence was glowing with excitement about her new adventure. Ruby was planning to reopen her art gallery, no longer afraid of Louise's criticism. "You know what the best part is?" I said to Nathaniel as we danced. "What's that?" "We didn't just get revenge. We got freedom. All of us." He spun me around, and I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the window. Not just a couple, but survivors. Warriors. People who'd learned that sometimes the happiest endings come not from getting even, but from getting free. To freedom, I whispered. To freedom, he agreed. And to Karma, who finally showed up to the party. Outside, the stars twinkled over a city where one family's perfect facade had crumbled, making way for something more beautiful, truth. And inside, surrounded by love and laughter and liberation, I finally understood. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's the joy of becoming exactly who you were always meant to be.
The first sign that my life was imploding came in the form of a credit card statement that wasn't supposed to exist. I found it wedged between the pages of Alejandro's legal briefs while organizing his home office, a task he'd always insisted on doing himself. Until today. My name is Ava, and I'm a financial planner who somehow missed the biggest financial fraud happening right under my nose. The irony isn't lost on me. "Honey, did you need any help with that?" Alejandro called from downstairs, his voice carrying that forced casualness that I'd been picking up on lately, but couldn't quite place. "No, I'm good," I called back, my hands trembling as I stared at the statement. 4-star hotels, jewelry stores, romantic restaurants, all in the past 3 months. None of them with me. My phone buzzed. A text from Kayla. "Still on for lunch tomorrow. Miss you. Haven't seen you in forever." But tonight, in the darkness of our bedroom, I made myself a promise. They thought they were so clever, the lawyer and the backstabbing best friend, playing the long game. But they'd forgotten one crucial detail. Numbers were my language, evidence was my ammunition, and revenge would be my masterpiece. I turned away from Alejandro and smiled into my pillow. They wanted to play? Game on. "Mrs. Hayes, I have to say, this is one of the most meticulously documented cases I've seen," Sampson said, adjusting his tie as he reviewed the files I'd brought to his office. "Most people in your situation come to me with suspicions. You've brought me a roadmap." I'd chosen him specifically because he specialized in financial fraud and had never lost a case against my husband's law firm. I need to know what my options are. "First," he leaned forward, "we need to secure your assets. Today. How much time do we have?" "Based on the patterns I've found, they're planning to leave after the Henderson payout. That's in 3 weeks. Sampson whistled. "Ambitious. They're looking at what, 2 million? 2.3. I pulled out my laptop. "And that's just the obvious part. Look at this." I showed him the trail I'd uncovered. A series of small transfers to an offshore account, disguised as business expenses. Alejandro had been careful, but he'd underestimated my attention to detail. My phone buzzed. Kayla again. "Lunch was amazing yesterday. We should do it more often before you get too busy with work." Lunch had been a masterclass in acting. I'd sat there, smiling and nodding as she talked about her upcoming business trip, the same week as Alejandro's legal conference in the Cayman Islands. "Your friend's not very subtle," Sampson observed. "No, she isn't." I showed him the text. "But she's useful. Every message is another piece of evidence." "Okay," he started typing on his computer. "First, we file for an emergency freeze on all joint assets. Then," my phone rang. "Lisa, he's asking questions," she said without preamble. "He just called me about getting together for your birthday planning." "Perfect. Keep him busy. I need another hour here." "Already on it. I've invited him to help me pick out your gift. We're meeting at the mall in 20 minutes. "You're the best." Sampson raised an eyebrow as I hung up. "Reliable sister?" "The most." I turned back to the documents. "What's our next step?" "We need to document everything without tipping them off. Your neighbor, Emerson, was it? The one who saw them together? We'll need her statement." "Already got it." I pulled out a sealed envelope. "Notarized this morning." A notification popped up on my phone. A bank alert. Another transfer attempt from our joint account to the offshore one. "Look at this," I showed Sampson. "They're getting bolder." "Or desperate." He studied the notification. "This works in our favor. Each attempt strengthens our case." I spent the next hour signing papers, transferring funds to secure accounts, and laying the groundwork for what was coming. By the time I left Sampson's office, the first phase was in motion. My phone buzzed with a text from Alejandro. Your sister is impossible to shop for you with. Miss you? Dinner tonight? Can't wait, I replied, adding a heart emoji. Where should we go? That new Italian place? The same restaurant where he'd taken Kayla last week, according to the credit card statement. Perfect. That evening, I dressed carefully. The blue dress he loved, hair down the way he preferred. As I applied my lipstick, another text came through, this time from an unknown number. Samson. Papers filed, assets secured, green light for phase 2. Alejandro was waiting downstairs, keys in hand. You look beautiful. Thank you. I kissed his cheek, noting the faint trace of perfume that wasn't mine. Shall we? At the restaurant, he was the perfect husband, attentive, charming, ordering my favorite wine. I watched him perform, marveling at how I'd never noticed the calculation behind his smile. Everything okay? He asked. You seem quiet. Just thinking about work. The Henderson account is taking up all my mental space. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. The Henderson account? Any issues? I almost laughed. My best friend since college, texting me like nothing was wrong, while her name was all over these receipts. Restaurant charges for 2, always when I was at my weekly client meetings, always with Alejandro's card. You sure you don't need help? Alejandro's footsteps were coming up the stairs now. I slipped the statement into my jacket pocket. Actually, I'm feeling a bit hungry. Want to order in? No, everything's right on schedule. I smiled. The payout's actually coming a week earlier than planned. Isn't that great? I watched the panic flash in his eyes before he covered it with a smile. That's wonderful, honey. Later that night, as he slept, I checked my phone one last time. 3 new messages. From Kayla. Girls' night soon, before my business trip? From Lisa. He spent 2 hours looking at jewelry he's never going to give you. Oscar-worthy performance from me, BTW. And from Samson. Everything in place. They won't know what hit them. I turned off my phone and closed my eyes, listening to Alejandro's steady breathing beside me. 3 more weeks of this charade. 3 weeks of smiles and kisses and careful documentation. Then we'd see who was really the better player at this game. They're in there right now, Emerson whispered, peeking through her kitchen window that overlooked the coffee shop across the street. 3rd time this week. I stood beside her, watching Alejandro and Kayla sitting at their corner table, heads close together over what looked like documents. My husband had told me he was in court all morning. Want me to record them again? Emerson asked, phone already in hand. Please, and thank you for doing this. Are you kidding? After what they did to Marcus last year? She pressed record. Your husband was his divorce lawyer while sleeping with his wife. They deserve everything coming to them. That was news to me. Marcus from the hardware store? Yep. Lost everything in the settlement. Had to move back in with his parents. I filed that information away for later. Send the video to my secure email? Already done. Emerson turned from the window. Coffee? As we sat at her kitchen counter, my phone lit up with an email notification. Not my regular account. The one I'd created using the fake name I'd found in Alejandro's documents. The same one he and Kayla had been using to communicate. Holy shit, I muttered, reading the email. What is it? They're not waiting for the Henderson payout. They're moving up their timeline. I showed her the email chain I'd managed to access. They're leaving next week. But you said, nah, I know. I fed them false information about an early payout. They took the bait. I grabbed my phone and dialed Samson. I saw the emails, he said before I could speak. We're ready. Everything's in place. Move it up, all of it, today. Today? Ava, are you sure? Through the window, I watched Kayla laugh at something Alejandro said. Absolutely sure. After hanging up, I texted Lisa. It's happening today. You ready? Her response was immediate. Born ready, heading to her house now. Emerson touched my arm. What can I do? Keep recording. I need to make a call. I stepped onto her back porch and dialed a number I'd memorized weeks ago. It rang twice. Mrs. Rodriguez? This is Ava Hayes. About that investment opportunity we discussed. I'm in. Mrs. Rodriguez, Marcus's mother, had been waiting for this call. Within minutes, everything was arranged. Back inside, Emerson was still watching the coffee shop. They're leaving. I checked my watch. Right on schedule. Thank you for everything, I told her. I need to go. Wait. She grabbed my arm. There's something else you should know. Last week, when they were here, I overheard them talking about other accounts, multiple ones. Show me. She pulled up another video on her phone. The audio was faint, but clear enough. Alejandro and Kayla discussing account numbers, dates, amounts, all carefully documented by my vigilant neighbor. Send it to Samson, I said, already heading for the door. And Emerson, when this is over, I'm buying you a better camera. I drove to my office, where my team had been prepped for weeks. They knew what to do without me having to say a word. As I walked in, Sarah from accounting handed me a stack of papers. All the transfers are flagged, she said. Every single one. Perfect. I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. Let's begin. The next few hours were a blur of phone calls, emails, and document signing. By 3 o'clock, everything was in position. My phone buzzed. Lisa. In position at Kayla's. You won't believe what I found. Another buzz. Samson. Court order secured. Standing by. And then, right on cue, Alejandro. Working late tonight, honey. Big case. I smiled at my phone. No problem. I'll be working late too. The Henderson account needs attention. He appeared in the doorway, handsome as ever in his casual weekend wear. I have that dinner meeting tonight, remember? The Morrison case? Right, of course. I smiled, wondering if the Morrison case had perfect blonde hair and wore the perfume I'd gifted Kayla last Christmas. No problem. I'll heat up some leftovers. His response came quickly. Don't work too hard. Love you. I put my phone down and looked at the time. In about an hour, Alejandro would discover that his access to our accounts had been revoked. Shortly after that, he'd learn about the court order freezing all assets, including the ones he thought I didn't know about. And Kayla? By now, Lisa would have gathered enough evidence from her house to destroy any chance of them claiming innocence. My phone rang again. This time, it was Marcus. Mom told me what's happening, he said. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. No, you don't understand. After what they did, just thank you. I ended the call and stood up, walking to my office window. Across the street, I could see Alejandro's law firm. Any minute now, he'd be getting a very interesting package of documents. My phone buzzed one final time. Samson. It's done. Ready when you are. I grabbed my coat and headed for the door. Time to go watch their world burn. The first call came exactly 17 minutes after the documents were delivered. I watched my phone vibrate across my desk, Alejandro's face lighting up the screen. I let it ring. He's trying to access the Henderson account, Sarah reported from her computer. System's denying him. My phone buzzed again. Kayla this time. Ava, please call me. It's urgent. The office door burst open. Lisa strode in, holding up a USB drive like a trophy. You're not going to believe what I found at Kayla's place. Tell me. Not just your accounts. She plugged the drive into my computer. They've done this before, 3 times. Different cities, different victims, always the same pattern. Photos filled my screen, documents, bank statements, letters, a systematic trail of destruction across state lines. My phone kept buzzing. Alejandro, Kayla, Alejandro again. Ms. Hayes? My assistant poked her head in. Mr. Hayes is in the lobby. He's quite insistent. I straightened my jacket. Perfect timing. Lisa, send everything to Samson. Sarah, start the trace on those other accounts. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. When the doors opened, I saw him pacing the lobby, running his hands through his hair. A tell I'd learned meant he was panicking. Ava! He rushed toward me. There's been a mistake. The accounts are frozen? I smiled. No mistake. He stopped short, his face changing as realization hit. How long have you known? Long enough. I nodded to security. Mr. Hayes was just leaving. Ava, please. Let me explain. Explain what? The offshore accounts? The plans with Kayla? Or should we talk about Marcus first? He paled. Marcus? And the others before him. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? His phone chimed. He checked it, cursed, then looked at me with desperate eyes. Whatever you think you know? I know everything. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Every account, every meeting, every lie. And in about 10 minutes, so will the Bar Association. As if on cue, his phone exploded with notifications. I watched his face as he read them, saw the moment he realized it was all falling apart. You can't do this, he whispered. I already have. He grabbed my arm. You'll destroy everything! Security moved forward, but I held up my hand. No, Alejandro. You did that yourself. Now, would you like to leave on your own, or should these gentlemen help you? He let go, straightened his tie, tried to recover his dignity. This isn't over. Actually, it is. Oh, and Alejandro, I called as he turned to leave. Say hi to Kayla for me. She might want to check her own accounts. The moment he was gone, my phone rang. Samson, it's done, he said. The Bar Association has everything. So does the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit. And Kayla? Her firm just received an interesting package about employee fraud. I'd say her partnership track is effectively over. I ended the call and turned to Lisa, who'd appeared beside me. Ready for phase 2? She grinned. Marcus and his parents are waiting at Samson's office, along with some other interested parties. My phone buzzed again. A text from Emerson. They're at the coffee shop, both of them, looking pretty frantic. Good, I checked my watch. Time to pay them a visit. Want backup? Lisa asked. No, this part I need to do alone. The coffee shop was 3 blocks away. I walked slowly, letting them stew in their panic. Through the window, I could see them huddled in their usual corner, phones out, faces pale. Later that night, I sat in our kitchen, laptop open, methodically going through our joint accounts. 12 years of marriage, and I trusted him to handle our personal finances while I managed everyone else's money. Another bitter irony. My phone rang. It was Lisa, my sister. Hey, what's up? I tried to keep my voice steady. Ava, are you okay? You sound weird. I hesitated. Lisa had never liked Alejandro. Can you come over? The bell chimed as I pushed open the door. They both looked up, and for a moment, nobody moved. Ava, Kayla started, standing. We can explain. Sit down. My voice was ice. She sat. I pulled up a chair, noting how they instinctively leaned away from me. So let's talk about Marcus. Who? Kayla's confusion was almost convincing. Don't. I placed my phone on the table, started playing a recording. Their voices filled the space between us, discussing their previous schemes, their plans, their victims. Where did you get that? Alejandro demanded. Does it matter? I have everything. The accounts in Arizona, the couple in Oregon, all of it. Kayla started to cry. Alejandro reached for my hand. I pulled back. Please, he said. We can fix this. No, we can't. I stood up. But don't worry. I'm sure you'll have plenty of time to think about it. The FBI tends to be thorough with their investigations. As I walked out, I heard Kayla call my name. I didn't look back. My phone buzzed with a message from Samson. Marcus and the others are ready. Time to finish this. I smiled, hailed a cab, and headed toward the next phase of their destruction. Sometimes karma needed a little help, and I was more than happy to assist. Samson's conference room was packed. Marcus sat at one end of the long table, his parents beside him. Next to them were 2 couples I'd never met in person, the victims from Arizona and Oregon. Their faces showed the same mix of anger and betrayal I saw in my mirror every morning. They're running, Lisa announced, bursting into the room. Emerson just saw them leaving the coffee shop with suitcases, headed to the airport. I smiled. Right on schedule. Should we stop them? Marcus asked, half rising from his chair. No need. I nodded to Samson, who pulled up a live feed on the conference room screen. Airport security cameras showed Alejandro and Kayla rushing through the terminal. Their passports have been flagged, Samson explained. They're not going anywhere. We watched as they approached the international departures counter. Even without audio, we could see the moment everything fell apart. The confused looks, the frantic phone calls, the arrival of airport security. Is that... The woman from Oregon leaned forward. Are they being arrested? Not yet. I checked my watch. That comes next. Right on cue, 2 FBI agents appeared on screen. We watched in silence as Alejandro and Kayla were led away, their luggage abandoned at the counter. Holy shit, Marcus whispered. You actually did it. We did it, I corrected. All of us. Your documentation helped build the case. The woman from Arizona, Janet, wiped tears from her eyes. When you contacted us, I couldn't believe it was happening again, that they were still doing this. They were good at covering their tracks, her husband added, but not good enough. My phone buzzed, a call from an unknown number. Alejandro, probably using his one phone call. I declined it. What happens now? Marcus asked. Samson stood up, straightening his tie. Now we move forward with the civil suits. Ms. Hayes has already agreed to testify about their financial schemes. With the evidence we've gathered, plus their attempted flight, we have an extremely strong case. And the criminal charges? Marcus's father leaned forward. FBI's handling those. Wire fraud across state lines, conspiracy, multiple counts of financial fraud. They're looking at serious time. Another buzz from my phone. Kayla this time, using her call to send a text. Please, Ava, don't do this. We can work something out. I showed the message to Lisa, who snorted. The audacity. I have something you all need to see, I said, pulling out my laptop. Lisa found this at Kayla's house. It's their playbook. Detailed notes on how they selected their targets, how they manipulated accounts, everything. The room fell silent as I played the video files. Secret recordings Kayla had kept as insurance against Alejandro. Hours of them planning their schemes, laughing about their victims, counting their stolen money. Turn it off, Janet whispered. I can't watch anymore. I closed the laptop. I'm sorry, I know this is difficult, but we needed you to see who they really are. What about our money? The Oregon husband, David, asked quietly. 20 minutes later, we sat at my kitchen island. The evidence spread out before us. That lying, cheating bastard, Lisa whispered, scanning the documents. And Kayla? You're Kayla? I'll kill them both. No, I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. I have a better idea. Ava. Did you know, I said, pulling up our investment portfolio, that Alejandro gave me power of attorney over all our accounts last year? He said it was easier since I'm the financial expert. Already traced, Samson replied. Once the FBI finishes their investigation, we can begin recovery proceedings. Ms. Hayes has already offered to help navigate the financial aspects. My phone buzzed again. This time, it was Emerson. Their families are at your house, looking pretty angry. Let them be angry, I texted back. The security cameras will catch everything. The conference room door opened, and an FBI agent stepped in. We're ready for your statements now. Who'd like to go first? One by one, they left to tell their stories. I stayed behind with Lisa, watching the airport footage loop on the screen. You okay? She asked softly. Better than okay. I turned to her. But there's one more thing we need to do. What's that? I pulled up an email on my phone, the one I'd been drafting all morning. Send this to every law firm and financial institution in the state. They need to know who they're really dealing with. Lisa read it over my shoulder, whistling low. This will destroy their careers. Permanently. Good. My phone lit up with another message, a video from the security company. Alejandro's parents were at my front door, shouting and demanding answers. I forwarded it directly to Samson. More evidence, I said, standing up. Ready to give your statement? Born ready. Lisa linked her arm through mine. But first, want to grab coffee? The shop across from your house has a great view of the show. I thought about it. About sitting there, watching their families realize the truth, just like I had weeks ago. But that wasn't who I wanted to be. No, I said finally. Let's give our statements and go home. They're not worth any more of our time. We walked out of the conference room, leaving the airport footage playing behind us. On screen, Alejandro and Kayla were led away in handcuffs, their perfect escape plan in ruins. Sometimes karma needed a push, and sometimes that push came with handcuffs and an FBI escort. The preliminary hearing was set for a crisp Monday morning. I sat in Samson's office, watching him review the final documents while Lisa paced behind me. They're offering a deal, Samson said, sliding a paper across his desk. Full restitution to all victims, written confessions, in exchange for reduced charges. They're desperate, Lisa scoffed. They know they're screwed. My phone lit up with a message from Marcus. Just got the call about the deal. What should we do? Before I could respond, Samson's assistant burst in. Mr. Hayes is here, says he needs to speak with Ms. Hayes immediately. No, Lisa started, but I held up my hand. Let him in. Alejandro looked different after a week in custody. Rumpled suit, unshaven face, dark circles under his eyes. The swagger was gone. 5 minutes, he said, glancing nervously at Samson. Alone. Absolutely not, Lisa snapped. It's okay, I said, standing. We'll use the conference room, with the cameras. Once inside, Alejandro slumped into a chair. You have to help me. I don't have to do anything. Oh, Ava, please. They're talking about serious time, years. And Kayla, she's turning on me. I laughed. Of course she is. That's what happens when you build a relationship on lies. It wasn't all lies. He reached for my hand across the table. I pulled back. What we had was a fraud. I pushed the deal papers toward him. Like everything else about you. I'll sign whatever you want. Give back everything. Just help me make this go away. Make it go away? I leaned forward. Like you did with Marcus, or Janet and David? He flinched. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You and Kayla had a system. Find successful, trusting people. Infiltrate their lives. Steal everything. Move on. I stood up. But you got sloppy. Got too confident. What do you want? His voice cracked. Name your price. I want you to look at this. I pulled out my phone, showed him the video Lisa had found. Him and Kayla laughing about their victims, planning their next moves. Where did you get that? Your precious Kayla kept receipts. Lots of them. Insurance, she called it. The color drained from his face. She recorded everything? Everything. I put my phone away. The FBI has it all now. So does the Bar Association. And tomorrow, the court will have it too. Lisa's eyes widened. Oh my God. They've been planning this for months. Look at these transfers. Small enough to fly under the radar, but they add up. They're planning to leave. I showed her the pattern I'd discovered. Next month, probably, after the Henderson account pays out. How can you be so calm? I wasn't calm. I was nuclear. But rage could wait. Because I'm good at my job, Lisa. Really good. And they have no idea that I know. He buried his face in his hands. I'll lose everything. Now you know how it feels. A knock at the door. Samson. Time's up. Sign the deal, I said, walking to the door. It's the best you're going to get. Wait! He grabbed the papers. What about Kayla? Will she sign too? She already did, an hour ago. I smiled at his shocked expression. Turns out she's better at saving herself than saving you. Back in Samson's office, Lisa was waiting with news. Kayla's lawyer just called. She's giving them everything. Names, dates, account numbers. Good. I checked my watch. The others will be here soon for the final briefing. Are you sure you want to do this? Samson asked. The deal would be cleaner, faster. They don't deserve clean or fast. I looked out his window at the courthouse across the street. They deserve to face every person they hurt. My phone buzzed. Emerson. Just saw Kayla's parents going into the courthouse. They looked devastated. Another message followed quickly, from Janet. "We're here, in the lobby, ready when you are." I gathered my things, straightened my jacket. "Let's go, everyone's waiting." The courthouse lobby was packed. Marcus and his parents stood with Janet and David. The Oregon couple huddled with their lawyer. And there, by the entrance, stood Kayla's parents, looking lost and broken. "Mrs. Parker," I said, approaching Kayla's mother, "I'm sorry you're learning about your daughter this way." She grabbed my arm. "Is it true? All of it?" "Yes. And there's more, much more." She started to cry. Her husband led her away, but not before whispering, "Thank you for stopping them." Samson appeared at my side. "They're ready for us." As we walked toward the courtroom, I saw Alejandro being led in through a side door, hands cuffed. Our eyes met briefly. He looked away first. Lisa squeezed my hand. "Ready?" I thought about the past few weeks, the discoveries, the pain, the careful planning. Thought about Marcus losing everything, Janet's tears, David's quiet anger. Thought about every person these two had hurt in their quest for easy money. "Ready," I said, pushing open the courtroom doors. "Let's finish this." Behind me, I heard Alejandro's voice one last time. "Ava, please." But I kept walking. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just exposing the truth, it's making sure everyone hears it. The courtroom fell silent as the video played on the large screen. Kayla's voice filled the room. "It's so easy. They trust us completely. Alejandro handles the legal side. I play the friend, and they never see it coming." I watched the judge's face darken as the evidence unfolded. Beside me, Janet gripped her husband's hand. Behind us, Marcus's parents whispered furiously. "Turn it off!" Kayla shouted from her seat. "That was private." "Private like the lives you destroyed?" Marcus stood up, but his father pulled him back down. The judge banged her gavel. "Order, Miss Clark. One more outburst and you'll be removed." My phone buzzed again. Another text from Kayla. "Found the perfect birthday gift for you. Can't wait to give it to you next week." Lisa read the text over my shoulder and swore. "The nerve of that bye." "Let her play her game," I interrupted, already formulating a plan. "I'll play mine." "What are you going to do?" I closed my laptop and looked at my sister. "First, I'm having lunch with my best friend tomorrow. Then I'm going to visit a lawyer, not one from Alejandro's firm. After that?" I managed a smile that felt more like baring teeth. "After that, I'm going to make sure they regret ever thinking they could outsmart me." "Need backup?" "Always." After Lisa left, I went upstairs and lay down next to my sleeping husband. He'd come home late, smelling of his business dinner. Tomorrow, he'd wake up to his loving, unsuspecting wife. He'd kiss me goodbye, go to work, and continue plotting with my best friend to steal my money and break my heart. Alejandro sat separately from Kayla, his attorney looking increasingly defeated as each piece of evidence was presented. The offshore accounts, the falsified documents, the trail of broken lives across 3 states. Samson stood. "Your Honor, we'd like to call our first witness." I walked to the stand, feeling their eyes on me. Kayla wouldn't look at me, but Alejandro stared, silently pleading. "Ms. Hayes," Samson began, "when did you first suspect something was wrong?" "Objection!" Alejandro's lawyer jumped up. "Relevance?" "Overruled." The judge leaned forward. "Continue." I described finding the credit card statement, uncovering the patterns, discovering their previous victims. With each detail, I watched their facades crumble further. "And these accounts?" Samson held up bank statements. "Can you explain their significance?" "Those are the transfer records showing how they moved money between victims. They used my financial expertise without my knowledge, copying my investment strategies to make their fraud look legitimate." "You lying bitch!" Kayla shot up, face contorted. "You knew! You had to know!" "Remove her!" the judge ordered. As bailiffs led Kayla out, she screamed accusations until the doors closed behind her. Alejandro's attorney stood. "Your Honor, in light of this evidence, we'd like to change our plea." The courtroom erupted. Marcus pumped his fist. Janet burst into tears. Lisa squeezed my shoulder from her seat behind me. "Quiet!" the judge commanded. "Mr. Hayes, you wish to change your plea to guilty?" Alejandro nodded, defeated. "Yes, Your Honor." What followed was a blur of legal proceedings, victim impact statements, and final testimonies. Janet described losing her life savings. David talked about his children's college funds disappearing. Marcus faced Alejandro directly, describing how the betrayal had nearly destroyed his family. Finally, the judge spoke. "Never in my 20 years on the bench have I seen such calculated cruelty, such deliberate destruction of lives and trust." She shuffled her papers, looked directly at Alejandro. "Mr. Hayes, as an officer of the court, your actions are particularly egregious. Ms. Clark, though not present, shares equal culpability." The sentence came down like thunder. 15 years for each of them. No possibility of early release. Full restitution to all victims. Permanent disbarment for Alejandro. "This court is adjourned." As they led Alejandro away, he called out, "Ava, please!" I turned to him one last time. "Goodbye, Alejandro." Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed us. Samson handled the press, while Lisa shepherded me through the crowd. But before we could leave, Kayla's mother approached. "I'm so sorry," she sobbed, hugging me tightly. "We had no idea." "None of us did," I said gently. "That's how they operated." Marcus caught up with us at the bottom of the steps. "Thank you for everything. We're having dinner tonight. All of us victims, I mean. Would you join us?" I looked at the group, Janet and David, the Oregon couple, Marcus and his parents. People brought together by tragedy, united in justice. "I'd like that." My phone buzzed. Emerson. "Just saw the news. Congratulations. Wine at my place later?" Before I could reply, another message came through, from an unknown number. A text from Kayla's prison phone. "You'll regret this. We were friends." Lisa read it over my shoulder. "Want me to handle it?" "No need." I blocked the number. Some friendships aren't worth keeping. As we walked to our cars, Janet fell into step beside me. "What will you do now?" "I'm starting a foundation," I said, "to help people identify and recover from financial fraud, using my experience to prevent others from going through this." "Count me in," Marcus called from behind us. "Whatever you need." The others joined in, offering support, resources, connections. In that moment, standing in the fading sunlight with these survivors, I felt something shift inside me. "First," I said, "let's have dinner, share our stories. Then tomorrow, we start helping others write better endings to theirs." Lisa linked her arm through mine as we walked away from the courthouse. Behind us, justice had been served. Ahead of us lay purpose, healing, and the chance to turn pain into protection for others. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just winning, it's using that victory to make sure no one else loses. And that's how financial predators operate, I concluded, facing the packed auditorium. They don't look like criminals. They look like your friends, your spouse, your trusted advisors. Hands shot up across the room. A woman in the front row stood without waiting to be called on. "How do you do this? Face people after everything that happened?" "Because every person in this room represents someone who won't become a victim." I gestured to Marcus, standing by the side door. "And because I'm not alone." After the presentation, Marcus helped me pack up, while Lisa handled the line of people waiting to speak with me. "Third presentation this week," he said, coiling cables. "The foundation's really taking off." "Speaking of which," I pulled out my tablet. Janet called. 2 more cases just came in, similar pattern to ours. "Want me to handle the initial interviews?" "Please." "And David's team identified some suspicious transfers in Oregon. Could you—" My phone buzzed. A call from Samson. "Hold that thought." "Just got word," Samson said without preamble. "Kayla's trying to appeal her sentence." "Let me guess. Claiming she was manipulated by Alejandro?" "Exactly. But here's the thing. The prison recordings show her trying to set up new schemes from inside. Already sent the evidence to the DA. I ended the call, shared the update with Marcus. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Some people never learn. No, but others do. I nodded toward the auditorium doors, where Emerson was leading in another group for the evening session. That's why we're here. The evening group was different, all victims of financial fraud, gathering for mutual support and education. Janet and David were already there, setting up refreshments. Before we start, Janet announced, I have news. The recovery team found another account. We've secured the funds for redistribution to all victims. Applause filled the room. David hugged his wife, tears in his eyes. Their children would have their college funds back. Lisa slipped in beside me. Ready to tell them about the new initiative? I stepped to the front of the room. We're launching a nationwide network. Financial advisors, legal experts, fraud investigators, all working together to identify and stop these crimes before they destroy more lives. Like a fraud prevention task force? Someone asked. Better. I pulled up the presentation. We're creating a system that flags suspicious patterns across multiple institutions. The same patterns that Alejandro and Kayla used to hurt people will now help us protect others. The doors opened and Kayla's parents walked in. The room fell silent. Please, her mother said softly. We want to help. We need to help. I crossed the room, took her hands in mine. You already are. Your testimony helped strengthen the case against similar crimes in 2 other states. The meeting continued. Stories shared, strategies discussed, healing happening in real time. I watched Marcus comforting a newcomer, Lisa coordinating with our legal team, Janet and David sharing their recovery journey. My phone buzzed. A text from the prison chaplain. Alejandro asked to see you. Your decision. No, I typed back. Some chapters need to stay closed. After the meeting, we gathered at Emerson's house, the core team that had grown from victims to advocates. Over wine and takeout, we planned our next moves. The foundation's going national, Lisa announced, pulling up projections. 5 new offices opening next month. Make it 6, Marcus added. Just got approval for the Seattle branch. My phone lit up with a news alert. Financial Fraud Prevention Act passes Senate. The legislation we'd helped draft, inspired by our case, was becoming law. To justice, Janet raised her glass. To prevention, David added. To survival, Marcus said. I looked around at these faces, no longer victims, but warriors. Each carrying scars, each choosing to fight back. My phone buzzed again. Another case, another chance to help. To turning pain into purpose, I said, raising my glass, and to making sure what happened to us never happens to anyone else. Emerson brought out dessert, and the conversation shifted to tomorrow's presentations, next week's cases, next month's initiatives. No one mentioned Alejandro or Kayla anymore. They were just cautionary tales now, lessons learned the hard way. Outside, the city lights twinkled. Somewhere in those lights, someone was planning their next fraud, and somewhere else, someone was falling for it. But now there was a network waiting to catch them both, the predator and the prey. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from a stranger. Saw your presentation today. You saved my life. I was about to trust the wrong person. Thank you. I showed the message to the others, watching their faces light up. This was why we did it. This was how we won. Not just by surviving our story, but by helping others write better ones. Sometimes the best endings aren't about closure. They're about opening new doors for others.
The text message from my daughter made my coffee turn bitter in my mouth. Mom, I need you to stop calling. Dad's helping me secure my future. The inheritance is better off with him. My name is Eva, and in that moment I felt my carefully constructed world begin to crack. 21 years of motherhood, and this was the thanks I got. My daughter Reagan falling for her father's manipulative charm, just like I had all those years ago. I set my phone down on my kitchen counter, hands trembling. The inheritance money from my parents was meant to secure Reagan's future, not feed into Ruben's endless schemes. The same schemes that had torn our marriage apart 3 years ago. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Angela, my best friend and family lawyer. Ava, have you seen Ruben's latest business venture? she asked without preamble. No, what now? He's revived Armstrong Enterprises. The company's website went live this morning. You need to see this. I pulled up my laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. There it was, a sleek website promising revolutionary investment opportunities. The same company that had nearly bankrupted us 5 years ago was now supposedly thriving. This doesn't make sense, I said, scrolling through the page. He shut this down after the lawsuit. Unless he needed quick cash. Angela finished my thought. How much was Reagan's inheritance? $300,000. My voice cracked. My parents worked their whole lives to leave that for her education and future. Eva, listen to me. Come to my office. Now. 30 minutes later, I sat across from Angela in her downtown office, watching her flip through financial documents. Look at this. She pointed to a series of transactions. Armstrong Enterprises has been hemorrhaging money for months before going public. These numbers don't add up. He's desperate, I realized. The charming facade, the sudden interest in Reagan's life, the business revival. He's drowning in debt. My phone lit up with a text from my brother Evan. Sis, just ran into Ruben at the country club. He was with Bo Dixon. Remember him? Bo Dixon. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. He was Ruben's former business partner, the one who'd walked away right before everything collapsed the first time. Angela. I looked up at my friend. Determination replacing the shock. I need everything you can find on Armstrong Enterprises' current assets. Every transaction, every partner, every detail. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to beat Ruben at his own game. He's always been good at making people see what they want to see. But this time, I'm going to make him see what I want him to see. I called Evan back immediately. Did Bo seem friendly with Ruben? I asked. Far from it. Bo looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Want me to do some digging? Please. And Evan? Don't let Ruben know you're involved. That evening, I sat in my home office, staring at old photos of Reagan's graduation from high school. Her bright smile, Ruben's arm around her shoulders, my proud tears. 3 years ago, we still looked like a family. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Angela had sent over the preliminary findings on Armstrong Enterprises. As I scrolled through the documents, something caught my eye. A small subsidiary company registered in Bo Dixon's name, seemingly forgotten in the previous bankruptcy. I dialed Angela's number. I found our way in, I said without greeting. Remember that small tech startup Ruben and Bo invested in before everything fell apart? It's still active, and Bo's the majority shareholder. The one asset Ruben overlooked. Angela's voice held a note of triumph. Ava, this could change everything. Get me a meeting with Bo, I said, my resolve hardening. It's time to show Reagan who her father really is. As I ended the call, another text from Reagan appeared. Mom, please understand. Dad says this investment will triple my inheritance in 6 months. He's changed. I touched the screen, tracing the words of my daughter's message. Oh, honey. I whispered to the empty room. He hasn't changed at all. But I have. The setting sun cast long shadows across my office floor as I began to plan. Ruben had always underestimated me, dismissed me as the bitter ex-wife who couldn't let go. He forgot that I'd watched him build and destroy businesses for 20 years. I knew his playbook by heart. This time, I wouldn't just watch. This time, I would protect my daughter's future, even if she couldn't see the danger herself. Sometimes love means fighting battles your children don't even know are being fought. I opened my laptop and began to type. Dear Bo, we need to talk about Ruben Armstrong. Bo agreed to meet me at a small coffee shop on the outskirts of town, far from Ruben's usual haunts. I arrived early, watching him through the window as he pulled up in his Tesla, successful but subtle, exactly as I remembered him. Ava. He nodded, sliding into the booth across from me. I wondered how long it would take you to reach out. You knew? He stirred his coffee slowly, deliberately. When Ruben started showing up at the club again, throwing around big promises about Armstrong Enterprises, I knew it was only a matter of time before someone started asking questions. And what would you tell them? I leaned forward, studying his face. I'd tell them to look into the Meditech subsidiary. He pulled out his phone, showing me a series of documents. The one asset Ruben conveniently forgot during the bankruptcy. It's worth 7 figures now. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the financial statements. And Reagan's inheritance? Is probably already gone, Bo said quietly. But this could get it back. The bell above the coffee shop door chimed, and I quickly handed back his phone. My brother Evan walked in, right on schedule. Sorry I'm late, he said, sliding in next to me. Traffic was brutal. Bo's eyebrows raised slightly. The Montgomery siblings together again. Ruben won't like this. Ruben doesn't need to know, I said firmly. Not yet. Angela called while we were still talking strategy. I put her on speaker. Ava, I've been reviewing those transactions. Her voice crackled through the phone. There's something else. The timing of Reagan's inheritance transfer coincides perfectly with a major payment made to an offshore account. Bo nodded grimly. He's moving money around, trying to stay ahead of his creditors. Classic Ruben. Can we prove it? Evan asked. With the right documentation, yes, Angela replied. But we need access to Armstrong Enterprises' current financial records. I looked at Bo. Could you help with that? He hesitated, then pulled out a business card. There's someone you should talk to. My contact at the SEC. They've been watching Ruben's activities for months. My phone buzzed with a text from Reagan. Dad's taking me to dinner tonight to discuss investment strategies. Wish you could be happy for me. I showed the message to Evan, who squeezed my hand under the table. We need to move fast, I said. Before he burns through all of it, I'll set up a meeting with my SEC contact. Bo stood up. But Eva, be careful. Ruben's more desperate than you know. After Bo left, Evan and I headed to Angela's office. She was waiting with stacks of documents spread across her desk. Look at this. She pointed to a highlighted section. These signatures? They don't match Reagan's usual signature pattern. My heart stopped. Are you saying he forged them? Not exactly, but there's enough inconsistency to raise questions about duress or manipulation. Evan paced the office. We need more. Something concrete that Reagan can't ignore. What about Caitlin? I suggested. Reagan's roommate? She sees things we don't. Angela nodded. Good thinking. We need eyes and ears close to Reagan. I dialed Caitlin's number, praying she'd pick up. On the 3rd ring, she answered, Mrs. Montgomery? I was just about to call you. Reagan's been acting strange lately, ever since her dad started showing up at campus. Strange how? Stressed, distracted. She missed 2 important study sessions this week, and... She lowered her voice. I saw her crying in our room yesterday, looking at bank statements. My maternal instinct flared. Caitlin, I need your help. Can you keep an eye on her? Let me know if anything seems off. Of course. Actually, Mr. Armstrong is supposed to come to campus tomorrow for lunch. Something about meeting with financial advisors. I exchanged looks with Angela and Evan. Tomorrow could be our chance. Thank you, Caitlin. You're a good friend. After ending the call, I turned to Angela. How quickly can you get those documents to your SEC contact? First thing tomorrow. But Eva, we need to be strategic about this. One wrong move and Ruben could disappear with everything. He already took my marriage and my daughter's trust, I said, my voice hard. He's not taking her future too. Evan put his hand on my shoulder. We'll get it back, sis. All of it. As we left Angela's office, my phone lit up with another text from Reagan. Dad says I should be grateful he's managing my inheritance. Says you never understood business like he does. I typed back. I love you, sweetheart. Always will. Then I turned to Evan and Angela. Tomorrow we start pushing back. Hard. The university campus buzzed with activity as I parked my car. Caitlin had texted me the location of Reagan's favorite coffee spot where she and Ruben would be meeting. I wasn't planning to confront them, not yet. But I needed to see their interaction for myself. They just arrived, Caitlin texted. He's showing her something on his laptop. I found a spot at an outdoor table hidden behind a large planter, close enough to hear their conversation. Ruben's voice carried across the patio, smooth as ever. "See these projections, sweetheart? By next quarter, your investment could double." Reagan leaned forward, frowning at the screen. "But Dad, these numbers, they seem too good to be true." "Trust me, Princess. Would I ever steer you wrong?" My phone vibrated. Angela calling. "Ava?" she whispered. "The SEC just confirmed what we suspected. The offshore accounts? They're empty. He's been moving phantom money around." My hands clenched around my phone as I watched Ruben show Reagan another spreadsheet. "But what about my tuition for next semester?" Reagan asked, her voice smaller than I'd heard it in years. "Don't worry about that. The returns will more than cover it." A new voice cut through the conversation. "Reagan, I thought that was you." Caitlin appeared, right on cue, carrying 2 coffee cups. We'd planned this intervention carefully. "Oh, Mr. Armstrong." Caitlin smiled sweetly. "I didn't know you were visiting. I just came from Professor Chen's financial management class. We were just discussing investment red flags and due diligence." I watched Ruben's face tighten almost imperceptibly. "Fascinating," he said, closing his laptop. "But Reagan and I were just finishing up. Actually," Caitlin sat down uninvited. "Reagan, didn't you want to show your dad that article about the recent investment scam that targeted college students? The one we discussed in class?" Reagan's eyes flickered between Caitlin and her father. Yeah, I did save that article." "That won't be necessary." Ruben stood up abruptly. "I have another meeting. Reagan, we'll continue this discussion later." As he walked away, I saw Reagan's shoulders slump. Caitlin placed a gentle hand on her arm. "Hey, you okay? You've seemed really stressed lately." Reagan's voice cracked. "I can't shake this feeling that something's wrong. Dad's promises sound amazing, but they don't add up?" Caitlin suggested softly. My phone buzzed again. This time a text from Evan. "Bo's contact at the SEC wants to meet. Tomorrow morning." I watched as Reagan pulled out her phone, probably checking her bank balance again. Her face fell. "Kate," she whispered, "I think I made a huge mistake." "What do you mean?" "The inheritance. I gave Dad control because he said he could triple it. But now I can't access any of it, and when I ask questions, he just shows me more projections and promises." My heart ached. I wanted to rush over, wrap my arms around her, tell her everything would be okay. But she needed to see the truth for herself. Caitlin took a deep breath. "Reagan, remember what Professor Chen said about investment red flags? Promises of unrealistic returns, pressure to act quickly, emotional manipulation." Reagan's face went pale. "Stop. Please. I'm just saying, maybe you should talk to your mom. She's been trying to reach you. Mom doesn't understand business like Dad does." Reagan repeated the words mechanically, but I could hear the doubt creeping in. My phone lit up with another message, this time from Bo. "Eva, Ruben just tried to access the Metatech accounts. He's getting desperate." I watched as Reagan gathered her things, her movements jerky and uncertain. "Kate, I need to go. I need to think." As Reagan hurried away, Caitlin caught my eye across the patio and gave a subtle nod. Phase 1 of our plan was complete, planting the seeds of doubt. My phone rang again. Angela. "Eva, the SEC investigator has everything they need. They're moving forward with an investigation into Armstrong Enterprises." "How long?" "A few days, maybe a week. But Eva, Ruben's going to know something's up soon. We need to be ready." I stood up, watching my daughter's retreating figure. "Trust me, I'm ready." That evening, I received a text from Reagan that made my heart leap. "Mom, can we talk? Not about Dad or money, just talk?" I replied immediately, "Always, sweetheart. Your place or mine?" "Yours. Tomorrow after class." As I typed yes, I silently thanked Caitlin for helping Reagan take this first step. The wall Ruben had built between us was finally starting to crack. Now I just had to make sure he didn't destroy everything before we could save it. The SEC investigator's office was colder than I expected, or maybe it was just my nerves. Angela sat beside me while Beau joined via video call on a secure line. Mrs. Montgomery. The investigator, Sarah Chen, spread out a series of documents. These transactions show a clear pattern of fraud. Your ex-husband has been running what amounts to a sophisticated Ponzi scheme. Can you prove it? Angela leaned forward. We can, but there's more. Sarah pulled up a digital file. The Meditech subsidiary that Mr. Dixon brought to our attention? It's not just profitable, it's about to be acquired by a major tech company. Beau's voice crackled through the speakers. Ruben doesn't know about the acquisition offer. I've kept it quiet. How much? I asked. $8 million, Sarah replied. And since the original ownership structure was never properly dissolved during the bankruptcy, your daughter's inheritance gives her a legitimate claim to a significant portion. My phone buzzed. Reagan was on her way to my house. I needed to wrap this up. What do we need to do next? We'll freeze the offshore accounts today, Sarah said. But we need to move quickly. Once he realizes what's happening, he'll run, I finished. He's done it before. Angela gathered the documents. I'll file the emergency injunction this afternoon. Eva, you focus on Reagan. I rushed home, arriving just minutes before Reagan's car pulled into the driveway. She looked tired, smaller somehow, like the weight of everything was finally hitting her. Mom, she said as soon as she walked in, I need to show you something. She pulled out her phone, showing me a series of text messages from Ruben. He wants me to sign more papers tomorrow. Something about restructuring the investment. Her voice trembled. But when I asked to have a lawyer look at them first, he got angry. What did he say? That I don't trust him. That I'm ungrateful. That you've poisoned me against him. Tears spilled down her cheeks. Mom, I can't access any of my accounts anymore. The tuition payment for next semester is due next week, and My phone rang. Evan. Sis, Ruben just showed up at my office. He's looking for emergency capital. He seems desperate. Stall him, I said, then turned back to Reagan. Honey, there's something you need to see. I pulled up the SEC documents on my laptop, showing her the evidence we'd gathered. Her face went from confusion to shock to anger as she scrolled through the files. This can't be. Dad wouldn't. Reagan, look at the dates, the timing of the transfers. Your inheritance wasn't invested. It was used to pay off his debts. Her phone buzzed again, another text from Ruben. Princess, need you to sign those papers first thing tomorrow. Very time-sensitive opportunity. Reagan's hands shook as she set down her phone. All those projections he showed me, they were fake? Yes, but... My phone interrupted with a call from Angela. Ava, the injunction is in place. All accounts associated with Armstrong Enterprises are frozen. Reagan overheard and looked up sharply. What accounts? What injunction? Just then, both our phones exploded with messages from Ruben. To Reagan. Call me immediately. Don't listen to your mother's lies. To me. You vindictive bitch, you'll regret this. Mom? Reagan's voice was small. What's happening? I took her hands in mine. We're taking back your future. But I need you to be strong because this is going to get worse before it gets better. Her phone kept buzzing with messages from Ruben, each one more desperate than the last. She finally turned it off. The Meditech shares, she said slowly. The ones he made me sign over, they were worth something, weren't they? They're worth everything, honey, and we're going to get them back. Angela called again. Ava, Ruben's lawyer just reached out. They want to negotiate. No negotiations, I said firmly, watching Reagan's face set with determination. We do this by the book. After I hung up, Reagan stood up and walked to the window, staring out at the darkening sky. I have to see him, she said. One last time. I need to hear him explain himself. Are you sure? She turned back to me and I saw something new in her eyes. A strength I recognized from my own mirror. Yes, but not alone. Will you come with me? My phone lit up with a message from Beau. Ruben's at the country club. He's making a scene. I showed Reagan the message. Ready? She squared her shoulders. Ready. As we drove to the club, I realized this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about a daughter finally seeing her father for who he really was and choosing truth over comfortable lies. Sometimes the hardest battles are the ones we fight against our own illusions. The country club's parking lot was nearly empty when we arrived. Through the large windows, we could see Ruben at the bar, his usual polished appearance noticeably disheveled. Wait. Reagan grabbed my arm before we entered. What if he... I'm right here. I squeezed her hand. We do this together. As we walked in, Beau emerged from a corner table, giving us a subtle nod. He'd stayed to make sure Ruben didn't leave before we arrived. Reagan. Ruben's face lit up when he saw her, then darkened when he noticed me. What is she doing here? We need to talk, Dad. Reagan's voice wavered but held firm. About the inheritance, about everything. Princess, whatever your mother's told you. Show me the accounts, Reagan interrupted. Right now. Show me where my money is. Ruben's charm flickered like a faulty light. The investments are complicated, sweetheart. You wouldn't understand the... Try me. Reagan pulled out her phone. Because the SEC seems to understand them pretty well. The color drained from Ruben's face. He grabbed for Reagan's arm, but I stepped between them. Don't, I warned. You did this, he snarled at me. You turned her against me. No, Dad, Reagan's voice cracked. You did that yourself. The fake projections, the empty accounts, using my inheritance to pay off your gambling debts. I was protecting your future. He slammed his hand on the bar, making glasses rattle. Everything I did was for you. Like using my signature to transfer the Meditech shares? Reagan's words hit him like physical blows. Did you think no one would notice? Ruben's eyes darted between us, his mask crumbling. Who told you about Meditech? Beau did, I said quietly. He never signed over his shares, did he? And now with the acquisition offer? Acquisition? Ruben's head snapped up. What acquisition? The desperation in his voice confirmed everything. He hadn't known. 8 million, Dad. Reagan's tears flowed freely now. That's what Meditech is worth. My inheritance could have paid for my entire education. Instead, you used it to cover your debts. I can explain everything. Ruben reached for her again. Just call off the SEC. We can fix this as a family. Family? Reagan stepped back. Families don't steal from each other. Families don't lie and manipulate and... Don't you dare lecture me about family. Ruben's voice rose. Your mother poisoned you against me from the start. That's enough. Beau's voice cut through the tension as he approached. Ruben, it's over. The accounts are frozen. The SEC has everything. Ruben's face contorted. You betrayed me too? After everything we built together? We built nothing. Beau replied calmly. You destroyed everything we built. Just like you're destroying your relationship with your daughter right now. Reagan took a deep breath. I trusted you, Dad. With everything. My future, my education, my inheritance. How could you? Reagan, please. Ruben's voice turned pleading. Just sign these papers. He pulled documents from his jacket. One more signature and I can make everything right. I reached for the papers, but Reagan was faster. She took them, read the first page, and slowly tore them in half. No more signatures, she said quietly. No more lies. Ruben's facade finally shattered completely. You ungrateful little... Choose your next words very carefully. I stepped forward, my voice ice cold. Because they might be the last ones your daughter ever hears from you. The fight seemed to drain out of him all at once. He slumped onto a bar stool, suddenly looking old and defeated. It wasn't supposed to be like this, he mumbled. The deals were solid. I just needed time. Time's up, Beau said, nodding toward the entrance where two SEC agents had just walked in. Reagan turned away, unable to watch as the agents approached her father. I put my arm around her shoulders and guided her toward the door. "Reagan, wait!" Reuben called after us. "Please, just listen." She paused but didn't turn around. "Goodbye, Dad." In the parking lot, Reagan finally broke down, sobbing against my shoulder like she hadn't done since she was little. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she choked out. "I should have listened to you." "Hey," I lifted her chin. "You have nothing to be sorry for. He's your father. You wanted to believe in him. That's not a weakness, it's what makes you beautiful." My phone buzzed with a message from Angela. "Injunction granted. Meditech shares secured. We've got him." Reagan wiped her eyes, reading the message over my shoulder. "What happens now?" "Now?" I hugged her close. "Now we start rebuilding. Together." As we drove home, Reagan's phone lit up with one last message from Reuben. She deleted it without reading it. Sometimes the bravest thing we can do is walk away from those who hurt us, even when they share our blood. Angela's office was crowded the next morning. Reagan sat between me and Evan while Beau joined via video call again. On Angela's desk, papers were spread out like a battle plan. "The Meditech acquisition goes through next week," Angela explained. "With the injunction in place, Reagan's shares are protected. The SEC has frozen all of Reuben's accounts, but..." "But what?" Reagan asked, gripping my hand. "He's disappeared." Beau's voice crackled through the speaker. "Hasn't been seen since last night at the club." Reagan's phone buzzed. A blocked number. She answered on speaker. "Hello? Princess." Reuben's voice filled the room. "I need you to listen carefully." Angela quickly started recording the call. "I'm done listening to your lies, Dad." "I'm on my way to the Caymans," he continued as if she hadn't spoken. "There's still time to fix this. I have connections." "Are you seriously trying to flee the country?" Reagan's voice shook with disbelief. "It's not fleeing, it's strategic repositioning. Meet me at the private airport in 2 hours. Bring the Meditech paperwork. We can still salvage." "No." Reagan's voice was firm. "Turn yourself in, Dad. It's over." "You sound just like your mother," he spat. "Always so self-righteous. You have no idea what I've sacrificed for you." "Sacrificed?" Reagan stood up, anger replacing fear. "You stole my inheritance. You lied to me. You used me to get to Mom's family money. That's not sacrifice. That's betrayal. Everything I did was for your future." "My future?" Reagan laughed bitterly. "I had to borrow money from Kate to buy groceries last week because you drained my accounts. Some future." Silence on the other end. Then, 1 hour. Private airport. Last chance, Reagan. "Goodbye, Dad. The SEC will be waiting for you." She hung up, hands trembling. Angela immediately called her contact at the SEC. "They've already got units heading to the airport," she reported. "He won't make it out of the country." My phone lit up with a message from Caitlin. "Reagan's graduation robe just arrived at our dorm. Should I bring it to you?" Graduation. In all the chaos, I'd almost forgotten it was next week. "Reagan." I showed her the message. "Whatever happens with your father, you're still graduating. We're still celebrating." She managed a small smile. "If I can still afford to graduate, the tuition is taken care of." Beau interrupted. "The Meditech shares are worth more than enough. And Eva, there's something else you both should know." He sent a document to Angela's printer. She handed it to Reagan. "What is this?" Reagan scanned the paper, her eyes widening. "Your grandfather, my father, left you additional shares in his will." Beau explained. "Reuben never knew about them. They're worth another $2 million with the acquisition." Reagan's hands shook as she read. "All this time..." "Your grandfather knew Reuben's type," Beau said softly. "He set this up as a safety net just in case." Evan squeezed Reagan's shoulder. "Smart man, your grandfather." Angela's phone rang. "The SEC. They've got him." she announced after a brief conversation. Caught him trying to board a private plane. He's in custody. Reagan let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for months. Is it really over? Almost, Angela said. There's still paperwork, court dates, testimony. But the hard part? I hugged my daughter close. That's over. Later that evening, Reagan and I sat on my back porch, sharing a pizza like we used to before everything fell apart. Mom, she said quietly. How did you know? When you were married to Dad, how did you know when to walk away? I thought carefully before answering. When the pain of staying became greater than the fear of leaving. She nodded, picking at her pizza. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed. All the times I defended him to you. Hey, I turned to face her. You saw the best in him because that's who you are. Don't ever apologize for having a heart that wants to believe in people, even when they don't deserve it. Especially then, because now you know the difference between trust that's earned and trust that's manipulated. Her phone buzzed. Caitlin again. Graduation rehearsal tomorrow at 10, don't be late. P.S. Your mom's invited to the pre-ceremony breakfast. Reagan showed me the message. Will you come? Try and stop me. As the sun set, casting long shadows across the yard, Reagan leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to when she was little. Mom, thank you for fighting for me even when I pushed you away. I kissed the top of her head, my heart full. Always, baby, always. Sometimes the strongest love isn't the kind that holds on. It's the kind that knows when to fight, when to wait, and when to trust that truth will finally find its way home. Graduation morning dawned bright and clear. I arrived early at the campus cafe for the pre-ceremony breakfast, finding Reagan already there with Caitlin, both in their graduation robes. Mom, Reagan waved me over. The news just broke. She handed me her phone, showing a local news article. Local businessman charged with fraud faces 20 years. They're calling it one of the biggest investment fraud cases in the state, Caitlin added, scrolling through her own phone. Reagan's hands fidgeted with her coffee cup. His lawyer called this morning, asked if I'd speak at his sentencing hearing next month. What did you say? I told him I'd think about it. She looked up at me. Would you come with me if I do? Of course. I squeezed her hand. Whatever you decide. Angela arrived carrying a thick envelope. Sorry I'm late, but you both need to see this. She pulled out documents showing the Meditech acquisition had closed early. The shares were now worth even more than expected. 10 million, Angela announced. Reagan's portion is just over 4 million. Reagan's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. What? The tech company fast-tracked the deal when they heard about the fraud investigation. They wanted to protect their investment. 4 million, Reagan whispered. I could pay for med school, help other students, start a scholarship fund. Already thinking about helping others? I smiled. That's my girl. Caitlin checked her watch. We should head to the auditorium. They want graduates lined up in 30 minutes. As we walked across campus, I noticed Reagan kept checking her phone. Expecting a call? Dad's lawyer again. He says Dad wants to see me before the ceremony. We all stopped walking. He's out on bail until sentencing, Angela explained. But Reagan, you don't have to. I want to. Reagan straightened her graduation cap. One last time, to say what I need to say. Where is he? I asked. Waiting in the campus garden. We found Ruben sitting on a bench, looking smaller somehow in the morning light. When he saw Reagan in her graduation robe, something flickered across his face. Pride? Regret? Maybe both. Princess, don't. Reagan held up her hand. You don't get to call me that anymore. He deflated visibly. Reagan then, I just wanted to say, no, Dad. For once, you're going to listen. Reagan's voice was steady. I used to think you hung the moon. Every broken promise, every manipulation, I made excuses for all of it. But now I see you clearly. Everything I did was for yourself. She cut him off. Not for me. Never for me. Reuben stood up, reaching for her hand, but she stepped back. The funny thing is, Reagan continued, you actually gave me something valuable in the end. You taught me what real love looks like. It looks like Mom, fighting for me even when I couldn't see the truth. It looks like Uncle Evan and Uncle Bo, protecting what Grandpa left for my future. It looks like Caitlin and Angela, standing by us through everything. Tears rolled down Reuben's cheeks. Reagan, please, I forgive you, she said quietly. Not for you, but for me, because I don't want to carry this anger anymore. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or trusting you again. You're my daughter, and you're my father, but that's not a blank check to keep hurting me. She straightened her graduation gown. Goodbye, Dad. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. As she turned to walk away, Reuben called after her. Will you at least save me a seat at the ceremony? Reagan paused but didn't turn around. No, those seats are for people who helped me get here. You're not one of them. We walked away, leaving him on the bench. Angela squeezed my arm before heading to find her seat in the auditorium. You okay? I asked Reagan as we approached the lineup area. She smiled, and for the first time in months, it reached her eyes. Better than okay. I feel free. The graduation march music started playing inside the auditorium. Mom? Reagan hugged me tight. Thank you for never giving up on me. Never could, never will. I straightened her cap one last time. Now go show the world what you're made of. As she took her place in line, I saw not just my daughter, but a woman who had faced betrayal and emerged stronger, who had learned that sometimes the hardest lessons come from those we trust most, but that those lessons don't have to break us. The doors to the auditorium opened, and the graduation procession began. Reagan turned back one last time, giving me a bright smile and a thumbs up. Some victories aren't about winning or losing. They're about finding the strength to write your own story, even when others try to write it for you. This is the one, Reagan said, walking into the bright office space. It's perfect. I followed her in, taking in the large windows and modern furniture. The sign painter was already working on the frosted glass door. Montgomery Foundation, Empowering Education. The conference room can fit 20 people, she continued, practically bouncing with excitement. Perfect for board meetings and scholarship interviews. Angela walked in behind us, carrying a stack of legal documents. Everything's finalized. The foundation is officially registered. Reagan ran her fingers along the sleek desk that would be hers. I still can't believe this is real. Believe it, Evan said, walking in with a box of supplies. You've earned this. My phone buzzed, a text from Bo. Just got the final numbers from Meditech. The shares are worth even more than expected. Reagan's foundation is set for decades. Uncle Bo says hi. I showed Reagan the message. And congratulations. Caitlin arrived with coffee for everyone. The first scholarship applications are already coming in. Word spreads fast when you offer full rides to med school. Speaking of which, Angela pulled out another document. The judge wanted you to see this before tomorrow's sentencing hearing. Reagan took the paper, reading it carefully. Dad wrote this? His complete confession. Angela nodded. He admitted everything. The fraud, the manipulation, all of it. The judge will probably reduce his sentence because of it. Are you still planning to speak at the hearing? I asked. Reagan set down the confession. Yes, I need to say my piece. But first, she pulled out a folder of her own. We have our first scholarship recipient to select. We gathered around the conference table. Me, Angela, Evan, Caitlin, with Bo joining on video call. Reagan stood at the head of the table, spreading out applications. This one. She pointed to a particular file. Sarah Chen's daughter. Her father left them with nothing but debt. She wants to study business law to help other families avoid financial fraud. Poetic justice, Bo commented from the screen. It's not just about the money, Reagan continued. We're offering mentorship, internships, a support system. Everything I wished I had when I was trying to figure out who to trust. A knock at the door interrupted us. The sign painter had finished. Montgomery Foundation gleamed in elegant gold letters. Perfect timing, Caitlin said. The local news crew will be here in an hour for the official opening. Reagan straightened her blazer, looking suddenly nervous. Mom, will you help me practice my speech? Everyone else tactfully left the room, giving us privacy. What if I freeze up? Reagan paced. What if people only see me as the daughter of a convicted fraudster? Hey, I caught her shoulders. They'll see you for exactly who you are. A strong woman who turned pain into purpose. Who's using her inheritance exactly how your grandparents would have wanted. To help others. She hugged me tight. I couldn't have done any of this without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. My phone buzzed with a message from the prison chaplain. Reuben would like to make amends when Reagan is ready. I showed her the message. Maybe someday, she said quietly. But right now, I have more important things to focus on. The news crew arrived early. As they set up their cameras, Reagan stood at her desk, smoothing down her blazer one last time. Ready? I asked. She picked up the first scholarship award letter, the one for Sarah Chen's daughter. Ready. The cameras started rolling and Reagan began to speak, her voice clear and confident. The Montgomery Foundation was born from a simple truth, that trust once broken can be rebuilt into something stronger. Our mission is to help students who have faced financial hardship or betrayal to not just survive, but thrive. I watched my daughter shine in front of those cameras, turning her story of betrayal into a beacon of hope for others. This wasn't just an ending, it was a beginning. Not just for Reagan, but for every student who would walk through these doors seeking help. The foundation would be her legacy, not her father's betrayal. Her story would be one of rebuilding, not breaking. And as I watched her answer questions with grace and wisdom beyond her years, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting better. Last question, the reporter said. What would you say to others who have faced similar betrayals? Reagan caught my eye before answering. I'd tell them that your story doesn't end with the betrayal. It begins with what you choose to build from the ashes. Sometimes the strongest foundations are built on the ruins of what we thought would break us. And sometimes the best way to heal a broken trust is to become someone others can trust in turn.